Okay, greetings, family. 10-9-1. Be thankful unto the Most High, Mother, Father of creation. Uncle Jasaneb, life, prosperity, and health, as spoken in the ancient Mesonetic language, Hotep, Rastafari, and African power for all African people. I want to send a special shout out to my brother Content Over Everything, the first person to comment in the chat. I just want to make sure that kings and queens, brothers and sisters, hear me clearly. So please do let me know that you can hear me. You know what I'm saying? If you are, able to, you know what I'm saying, sense my voice at the moment using your ears, please do let me know that my voice is coming through loud and clear, kings and queens, loud and clear. Do let me know. Let me just make sure. Yeah, my mic is not muted, kings and queens, so you should be hearing me right about now. So just give me a, you know what I mean, a little notification. Press 9 or something in the chat right there, loud and clear. Give thanks to, I believe that says Kaz Rudy, you know what I'm saying? We give thanks and asking everyone that comes the show, they make sure the presence of this live can be felt and experienced all over YouTube land. Also, feel free to, share the link to this video. We will be opening up the conversation to you all later on in the show. Yeah, open up the conversation to you all later on in the show. So stay attuned to the chat, because when we share the link, that will mean that you'll be able to come on live and interact with us, kings and queens. Okay. Right. So we're gonna today, as you know, our subject today is African spirituality. We're going to go into a breakdown. And, in the universe as we know it, kings and queens, in the universe as we know it, there are few people that I would go before the brother, and I should say the brother and sister that we have invited on the show, in the sense of the fact that the brother is a part of a family unit, kings and queens, that have dedicated their lives to teaching about the beauty of African spirituality, debunking the myths on African spirituality, demystifying African spirituality, removing the stigmatization upon African spirituality. And based upon the conversation that we've been having coming out of this series and going into religious debate as a result of that, it's so particularly very, 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 very highly important that we really delve deep into the traditions and spirituality of and revive and restore dignity and respect to it, kings and queens, because throughout time, many aspersions, we have been taught many lies, we have been taught many lies about our ancestors, about our great ancestral cultures, about our great ancestral civilizations. And central to our great ancestral cultures and civilizations are our spirituality, kings and spirituality is key. When I send a special shout out to Content Over Everything as well, because we had some debates on Sunday regarding this thing. And, they have a concept that they call major world religions. Yeah, I think there's 5 of them in total, but then there's 3 of them that are specific because they come in the Abrahamic line. And unfortunately, the Abrahamic line tends to dominate. Yeah, it tends to dominate our view and our perspective, the lens through which we view spirituality and religion. But kings and queens, there was spirituality and religion prior to the Abrahamic religions, and African people have known the Most High, divine creator, mother, father of the universe for as long as we have been on the planet, kings and queens, for as long as we have been in existence. We have the oldest and most ancient traditions, most long-lived traditions. And so we really just want to share and demystify, because it was said in one of the conversations that, whereas you can go and find people from all kinds of different religions ministering and teaching about the principles, the values, the concepts, that are housed and enshrined in their spiritual practice, the ideology, the cosmology. This is not the same. It's not as prevalent as far as African spirituality is concerned. So we really do want to create this platform, to be able to do that, So we're doing that today, kings and queens, and I'm blessed, to be hosting it right here. And I'm blessed to be having these guests that we have. I want to send a special shout out to Brother M.A. Brown, Killing Donny, my queen Nahanda Sankofa is in the building. Brother Gabs, greetings. Witness is about, hear the whole truth and nothing but the truth about what exactly African spirituality is. Indeed. Let us hear the good, bad, and the ugly about African spiritualities. I'm sure my brother's going to want to delve into some of the uglies, you know what I'm saying, because we had that conversation before. Bigging up brother Nino Brown. Once again, asking everyone to hit the like button and share, kings and queens. If you think anybody that you know will be able to benefit from this conversation right here, do share the link to the video. Right, kings and queens, our guest this evening is Brother Dalian Adofo. Yes, Brother Dalian Adofo, along with his co-regent partner, wife, queen, empress, goddess, Sister Verona Spence-Adofo, are the founders of Ancestral Voices, yeah, co-directors, co-producers of Ancestral Voices, which is a series of 2 films so far and a book detailing, yeah, the ideas, the philosophies, the rituals housed within many different African spiritual systems. Okay, and so, you know, we're going to get into that right about now, but for now you can check the description. Yeah, in the description to this video you'll be able to see that you can find 3 links in there, 3 primary links. One of the links is to the Ancestral Voices website, at which you can view their articles and also purchase the 2 DVDs and the book, kings and queens. Yeah, the 2 DVDs and the book. The 2 Ancestral Voices Part 1 and 2, which is a documentary series that, you know, elucidates much information and knowledge on African spirituality. And you can also view the trailer as well. You can also view the trailer for Ancestral Voices 2 in the description to the video. And finally, you will find the link to a conversation. I was blessed to be able to host one of the launches to Ancestral Voices 2 in South London. And we had a nice conversation after the screening, kings and queens. And so, you know, it's beautiful to be able to do that kind of work. The conversation, the link to that conversation is in the description. You can check it out after this. Bigging up brother Sarah in the building. Greetings, thank you for joining us. Bigging up sister Hawaii from across the water over there, you know, over the Atlantic Ocean. My brother Jahazel is representing Tendai Mwadi, my brother. Mwadi Makudakudu. You know, the creator is the highest above all heights. Kudzai Mazil Makuda, we give praises unto our great ancestors. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, let's go. So let me just make sure that my brother get it loud and clear. Brother Dalian, are you with us?
Yes, brother ShakaRa, I'm here. I'm here. Thank you for the lovely introduction. But yeah, I'm here and I'm ready to participate.
We do tend to give lovely introductions for lovely people. You know?
Excellent. Yeah.
Clear. My kings and queens that are listening, watching right about now, just hit the 9, yeah. Hit the 9 if you can hear our brother Dalian loud and clear. You know what I mean? I'm seeing all man got Ankh inside the building, you know. Man's are putting Ankh emojis, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Up in the chat. You have to let me know how to do these Ankh emojis, you know. I want to see that still. You get me? Anybody, you can put a 9 in the chat or put an Ankh in the chat if you can hear brother Dalian loud and clear, kings and queens. Just let me know, you know what I mean? Just let me know. Yeah, and Gabs, you gotta let me know how to do the Ankh business, bro. The Ankh business, I'm liking it right about now. You know what I mean? All right, kings and queens. Yeah. Yes, we got the 9. All right, bigging up. I'm supporting your healing journey through ancient wisdom. What a holy name, and I think I know who that is. You know? I think I know who that is. Blessings, my sister. You know, it's always a pleasure to be in your cipher. You know what I mean? So we thanks for you joining us today. All right, brother Dalian, we're gonna get right into the substance of the thing here, to the essence of the thing right about now. Because right. So where I want to start. Is with this idea that of the phrase African spirituality. Yeah. Now the reason is because many people challenge the use, yeah, of this phrase. All right. Yeah. Many people say when you use the word African spirituality, what are you trying to say around it? Are you trying to say that all African people were just dealing with one thing and it all looked the same? Is that viable? You know. Is it the fact that you diaspora and Caribbean people with your romantic ideas about Africa are trying to impose, you try to impose your view, your perspective of Africa on, you know, the real Africans who are on the continent right about now? And is it not the case that there's so much difference and diversity among African traditions that a term like African spirituality is redundant? Yeah. Now you're a man that uses this phrase, and where are you from again? Where are you from again? I'm
from Ghana originally. Yep.
You're from Ghana, yeah? Yep. Right. So you're a real African.
Yeah, I'm a continental African, if you will. Right. That's the One's continental, the other is apparently diasporic. So, you know, yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's
And so and from being a Ghanaian, you're from you're Akan, right?
Yes.
Right.
I'm Asante, and the Asante belong to the confederation known as the Akan.
Okay. Beautiful. Right. So why then do you find, you know, kind of legitimacy in the term African spirituality?
We find legitimacy in the term African spirituality for a number of simple reasons, right? The first being that any form of practice, yes, whether it's spiritual, social, economic, whatever else you want to call it, is informed by a philosophy. The philosophy meaning the theory and the ideas behind why you create a particular series of actions. Yeah. So everything is informed by a philosophy. So where we can find that even though the expression of that philosophy might differ slightly, if we can identify that the philosophy that informs it is the exact same or similar, then we know that really all we're dealing with is a different expression of the same philosophy, the thinking behind it. There's absolutely no difference. So there is more than enough legitimacy in African spirituality, or using the term African spirituality. And I'll give you an example.
Yes, sir.
Go on.
No, go ahead. That was the first one.
Yeah. So I will use the first example of this invocation or prayer form we have in African spirituality known as libation. Okay. Where it's the act of pouring a liquid, usually water or alcohol, on the ground and uttering words that you want to invoke into your reality.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
So in the Akan system, they might start off by calling the ancestors, you call the natural forces, and then you call the creator. Okay. Yes. You find this exact same prayer form in, let's say, among the Yoruba. But for instance, the Yoruba, before they even start the invocation, they will face the 4 cardinal points of what we call the compass. And what this represents is to show that you're calling in the all, what people normally call God.
Right.
Okay. So if just because the Akan will pour theirs directly onto the ground, and the Yoruba maybe goes for all the 4 cardinal points. Yes. In even going as far back as, let's say, ancient Egypt, or even let's go down to what we now call South Africa, where they might pour the water on their big toes, because basically the symbolism of that is that your feet is what leads you to where you're going in life. So the prayer, by pouring that water onto your toes, is like directing your feet to go in the right direction. Just because you've performed 3 slight different expressions of the same thing doesn't mean they're different. Do you understand? Because as a concept, it's doing the same thing. It's invoking your ancestors, the natural forces that surround you, and this notion or idea that we call God.
Yes, sir.
Or the creator.
Yes, sir.
But it's the same thing. It's just that in a particular community, they found a way to extend it to suit their needs. But as a concept, it's the same thing. Yes. So in these things, they are the same. We can find many of them across African spirituality, which is why the term is valid. And I can list these 5 areas for you if you want.
Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So in every African tradition, and remember, when I'm talking about African, I'm not just limiting it to the continent. We're also talking about its expressions in the diaspora. So in systems that we call, let's say, the Haitian voodoo system, or Brazilian candomblé, or even Brazilian Santeria or Lukumi. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we're also talking about what happened thousands and tens of thousands of years ago in the area we now call Egypt. Okay, we can find pretty much the same things. The first one is there is an acknowledgement of forces within nature.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that we can interact with and even exist within us, such that we can bring those forces forward. Yes, because those forces identified, we also find them within the human makeup. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
one is the natural forces. There's absolutely no African community that will not tell you they have an understanding of natural forces. Obviously, they have different names for it, but you will find most of the attributes are the same, which is why you find particular rivers being revered as, for lack of a better word, a deity, or but basically a force. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's one of them. Yeah, then we have also the notion of each and every individual having a destiny, a divine destiny or a purpose for why they exist. Again, you can't find one single community that doesn't have this notion. Okay. The third thing we can get into is ancestors, an acknowledgement of our deep and intricate connection with our ancestors going back generations and even in the present moment. Okay, that's three so far I've mentioned. Let's carry on. Then we look at what we might call prayer or invocation forms. Okay, I already mentioned one, which is libation. You show me one African community that doesn't have libation.
I haven't come across one at all. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. And then we have drumming, dancing, singing. These are not just secular practices that we find as we understand what dancing, singing, and drumming is, because they have a sacred purpose as well. Yeah, their forms of prayer. Again, show me one community that doesn't have drumming in there, that doesn't do singing, that doesn't perform libations. But you said you found two. Feel free, speak to me about them, and let's take it further. We also look at the concept of even having shrines and altars in every community, because that's your space where you bring in the divine forces. And then we can also even look at offerings. Again, show me a community that doesn't give out offerings with the expectation of it being reciprocated.
Right.
Yes. And then ritual. I've given you at least 6, 7 different ones. So with all these things in common, how can we not use the word African spirituality?
Beautiful. And just to clarify, what I said was I have not found one. I've never come across an African spiritual.
Right. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, because maybe you broke. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I have not come across one ever. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Right now, just as we set this introduction, in the world as we know it today, there are two major terms that are used to refer to African spirituality. One is African spirituality, and the other is African traditional religion. Do you have a preference for one over the other, and if so, why?
That's a very excellent question there, Brother ShakaRa. Personally, and I would say objectively, I really do not like the term African traditional religion, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the word religion tries to denote that there's some kind of dogma that controls the various systems, and as I exactly showed you just now. If it was, let's take a religion with a dogma like the Abrahamic traditions, you can't decide that, let's say, to pray to, I don't know, your Most High, you're not going to pray 5 times a day. Let's use Islam as an example. You cannot operate outside of that. It's impossible. That is the rule. Whereas Africans don't have that. Yeah, even in let's use the Akan. The same forms of libation, as I mentioned to you, even within the same Akan confederation, you will find the libations differing in slight ways of performing it. But that action of pouring water onto the ground, because it has a spiritual concept, I can get into that if you want as well. You will find that exact thing there. So first of all, we cannot use the word religion, okay? Because it kind of puts it in a closed box.
Yes.
Okay. Then the next thing, which is the key thing, is this word traditional. Because when you use the word traditional, you kind of express this idea that it's stuck in time. Yeah, it's traditional. It's how they used to do it. And you do not, this tradition doesn't change. It's static. Okay, so this is why people then come and tell you things like it's backward and it's long ago, it doesn't apply now, because no, what we find in African expressions of divinity is that it's very dynamic, which is why, as I said, we can look to today and see it still expressing itself in the diaspora. There's nothing traditional about it. It's very dynamic, and it changes and can adapt to whatever the circumstance or if you want to call it, the natural environment you find yourself in. Yeah, so it's not a religion and it's not traditional. African spirituality gives us the expression that there are opportunities for multiple expression. Yeah, and these expressions can be pertaining to just you specifically, the individual, or even to the community at large. And we can call it African because, again, we find the similarities across the whole continent in geography and in time. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. And sorry, ShakaRa, just to add to that, some people also now, and that's also a very good term, I would admit, is that it should be called the African sacred science.
Right. Okay. All right. Maybe we'll come back to that near the end of our interaction just before we open up the line to our dear audience listeners. And we want to welcome those who are just joining the conversation. We're speaking to Brother Dalian Adofo, shedding light on African spirituality. We want to encourage you to like the video, and also share it, kings and queens. Share up the thing, share it up far and wide. Let all Africans know that there is beauty in African spirituality, and this is the place to find out, discover, and learn about it, kings and queens. You know what I mean? Brother Dalian, I'm going to ask you to substantiate your expertise slightly right about now. Yeah. And just let them know, because you studied this thing you've done some in-depth studies about various spiritual systems. So just give them an idea of the length and breadth of your study of African spirituality around the continent and the diaspora. Something you've been, some spiritual systems that you studied.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously from time in since when my teenage years, what came to me first was my own Akan means of veneration. Yeah. So we're going back a good 20 odd years. So that has been what has been informing my livity, if you will, since I was 19 and on. But within the last 8 years is when we took it deep, if you will, where we went really with the research. So to release the film Ancestral Voices, Spirit is Eternal, we traveled to South Africa, where we explored the Zulu system of veneration. Then we went to Haiti, where we explored the Haitian voodoo system. We went to Brazil, where we explored Umbanda and the Candomblé systems, as well as the Yoruba-derived systems there. Yeah, because one of the highest expressions within that space we call Brazil is, again, the Yoruba expression, and also the Congo. Yeah, and then obviously we went to the States where we interviewed some scholars as well. These are the places we went to explore these other derived systems to show where they connected with our premise of our research, which is the same, just different expressions of the same thing.
South Africa in your roll call just then?
Sorry?
Did you mention South Africa in your roll?
Yeah. Sorry, no. Hello?
Call just then. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go on.
Yes, sir. No, I was just checking if you mentioned South Africa. But yeah, you said that you did.
Yes, South Africa is the place we went to. We met with Credo Mutua, who's like the high Zulu Sanusi. So basically, he's the highest authority on Zulu cosmology, basically.
All right. So I'm emphasizing that for the audience to know that the brother and the sister have gone from West Africa to South Africa to the Americas, in studying African spirituality. And obviously, obviously have studied like Kemet spirituality as well, which is East Africa, and then which is the tradition of the Nile Valley. Yeah, so we can from Sudan going all the way up into what is Egypt. You know what I'm saying? So, the point is that we're dealing with quite a large breadth, of systems at the moment. All right.
Yeah.
I'm emphasizing that because we're now going to get into some specifics, but because we can't, we don't want to, we want to focus the conversation so that people can walk away with some information here. But we're going to focus the conversation around West Africa and look at the spiritual system, which is known as Akom, and the Yoruba spiritual system, which is known as Ifa. Yes. I do want to do another. We will be hopefully, and I'll let you know now to the audience here, we're going to bring on a sister who is an acquaintance of both myself and Brother Dalian, sister Verona, in looking at African spiritual systems in the Caribbean. Yeah, and she got by the name of Sister Ya Asantewa, who is well studied in that particular discipline, King's Talking. But for today, we're going to focus on Ifa and Akom, yeah, and hopefully at some point we'll do a session specifically on voodoo, yeah, you know what I mean, because voodoo is a system that has been particularly demonized, yeah, for all kinds of reasons, you know what I mean. And later on in the conversation, Brother Dalian, we're going to get into the political implications of African spirituality as well, slightly. All right. So bigging up all those who are continuing to join us. Bigging up Brother Isa. Greetings, my brother. Greetings, my brother. Thank you for joining us, Brother Isa. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And yes, do check out the website to Ancestral Voices. It's in the chat right about now. You can also find the link in the description to this video, as well as the trailer for Ancestral Voices. Okay, so let's begin at the beginning. Yeah. Now, Brother Dalian, do Africans have a concept of the supreme deity?
Yeah. Oh, of course they do. And that concept is even more elaborate than you can find in any religion, and I can say that boldly. I'm going to give you three. Well, we're focusing on the West African, but also remember that everything that I will mention here, ShakaRa, as I said, you can also find it in the other system. So whereas I'm explicitly speaking on two, we can find the same everywhere else. So let's look at the first conception of what we call God, or this notion of what is the creator. I'll mention three key things and relate them back into the African philosophy or thinking, if you will. So the first is that this notion of God is a male and female pair together. Yeah, we're looking at a masculine and a feminine principle. Okay, so for instance, when we look at within the Akan, they will, before libations or these invocations, they will call it first, Tradia Mponyankupon Kwame, which is like if you want to call it the masculine aspect, and it's a masculine aspect because the name Kwame is in that invocation. Okay, and that represents what you might want to call the sky or the space above. Okay, and then they will also then pour the libation down to Asasiya, which means Mother Earth. And Ya is the denotion that lets you know that they're referencing a female or feminine entity. Because Ya is the name, the feminine aspect of a person born on Thursday. Okay, again in the Yoruba system, you have Oludumare, as this conception of that aspect of the creator up above, and then you also have the earth, I believe by the name of Iya or Aya. I have to go through the notes, but who's also the feminine representation. So what we're really looking at with this masculine and feminine is the simple idea, first of all, of balance. Balance and harmony. And also a very key aspect of this is that for anything to come into being, for anything to be created, you need that masculine and feminine interplay. Yeah. So this takes us away totally from the idea. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. This takes us totally away from the idea of, even if we want to call it gendering, this thing we call God, because that means God now is an entity that has both genders together. Yeah, because what we're dealing with is the concept of creation coming into being. It's not an individual sitting in some lovely looking white space with a white beard. I don't know, that looks like George Bush's great ancestor. None of that stuff here. We're just dealing with the concept of creating.
Right,
That really is what that represents, yeah. So that's the first idea of the concept of God that I would push forward. The second is that what we call God or the Creator is just an energy. It's a force.
Right.
It's a consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have, for instance, within the Akan, there's a proverb that says, "If you want to speak to God, tell it to the wind."
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay? It's not saying that God is the wind. It's telling you that everything that you see around yourself is God.
Dalian, just say the saying in chief for me, please.
Okay, bear with me. I'm gonna have to paraphrase it because I don't remember the proverb word for word, but it says something along the lines of Adibia pesa ukache nyame no kache mframa. Mframa is the wind, and nyame is another name or term for what we call God.
Yeah. All right, cool. Go ahead.
The paraphrase of the exact proverb or quote, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then the third notion is of the creator or God being an ancestor. So this is where ancestral reverence, you can see why it becomes very important again in all the African systems, because, and even when you just look at it from even just a simple logical framework, right? So you, Baba ShakaRa, you have a mom and a dad, right?
Yes, sir.
They also have a mom and a dad.
Sir,
so
yes, sir.
when we trace this going back, if you want to call it to time immemorial, what we're gonna find? We're gonna find the very first expression of whichever mom and dad was there that brought forward all the rest of life. So one of the things which is implicit and is not so explicit is the fact that you are an expression of this idea we call God. You're just an extension of that. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're directly connected to this source via what we call your mind.
Right.
How you use your mind. These things you call your thoughts.
Yes, sir.
Is either a voice of ancestors or a direct connection to that source of creation or different aspects of yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, you know, in that sense, we're going to get into this later, but just to give our audience a taste, the term for that in Ifa would be Ori, in terms of the consciousness that is connected to the divine source, correct?
That's right, yes. And the Ori is also a manifestation of your divine purpose or your destiny.
Yes. All right. Okay. All right. So just to kind of extemporize on some terminology that we find in the religious sphere, particularly with our Western experience, and we have phrases like monotheism, polytheism, and pantheism. Okay, and we have to tackle this because European so-called anthropologists have extended a lot of energy trying to decipher whether African people are polytheistic and therefore by implication pagan, or monotheistic and by implication holy. But in more recent times, there was a time when people, Africans who were affirming African spirituality, spent a lot of time trying to prove that Africans were also monotheistic. And then it evolved to a point whereby people were using the term pantheistic, in African spirituality. Do any of these terms apply?
Not really. Right. First of all, ShakaRa, I think it's also very important that we dispel some of these myths around some of these labels that people of a religious consciousness like to apply willy-nilly to things that they don't actually understand. But then they think that they're informed on it enough to give it labels. Okay, so the term pagan itself is not something negative per se. It's just a way of describing people who were not Christians or refused to be Christians in the time of the Romans invading this place we now call Britain.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's just it's like a slight. In the same way they'll call Africans devil worshippers.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
so it's just a way of, in a sense, trying to get you to feel bad about what you're doing, but then really it's another tradition trying to tell you what your tradition should be about. It doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense, you know. In the same way, like it would be like saying that, oh, you can't use the word Islam anymore. Just the word terrorism suffix is enough. Yeah, because you see some of them going out doing all this kind of madness. No,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
pantheism, polytheism. Yeah, you can see how people would use these terms, because in the traditions, as I already showed you, we don't have this one idea of this thing called God being, as I said, some man. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
It's a force that has different expressions of it. In the same way, what we call the air, when it's blowing fast, you can call it wind.
Yes.
Okay, because it just has a slight different expression to itself.
Yes. Yes.
Robin Walker has put, for me, a term that I think is the most comprehensive description of what we can call it.
Right.
And he says it's henotheism.
Okay.
Okay. Because you see, polytheism, especially, is what allows, as you correctly said, many people to say, okay, maybe this might be some kind of pagan, because we're just worshiping all these different mini, or should we say lower gods, that, and we don't have a term for the supreme or an understanding of the supreme. So that's why I don't really like that term polytheism in itself. But what Robin Walker, you know, the UK great historian, suggests to us is that there's this evolved idea called henotheism.
Right.
And this belief embodies the idea of one supreme God among many gods.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that is more the most comprehensive description you can find.
You have to stick a pin right there, you know, because when you say many gods, yeah, right, there are many people listening, yeah, that you know what I mean, that the hairs on their arms and legs are picking up right about now, because they say, yeah, that's again, that's idolatry, and some would use like shirk, yeah, because you're applying partners with the supreme deity. Like, so what is that concept of many gods then? If there's one supreme, why do we need many of many, one among many?
Right.
Or
so, yeah. So now, firstly, I'll have to draw it back. And again, as I said, we're limited in terms of language. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so a person who actually practices knows that there's nothing like gods.
Right.
What we're dealing with, any true and informed African practitioner, spiritual practitioner, will tell you that what we call, or these deep, because remember, African spirituality is largely defined by people who don't practice it.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're already starting at a big disadvantage. You're being defined by someone who doesn't understand what they're defining. You can't get a true and accurate description of it. So first, this idea of gods, we can just park that to the side.
Right.
Okay. Because again, when you look at this idea of gods, correctly rather, the forces within nature, you find that these forces themselves again exist within the human being. Right? So the human being itself, or himself or herself, is in itself an expression of that force of nature. Yeah, I'll give you a quick example before I shoot off. One of the ones is what they call largely Yamaya, or Mami Water, which deals with this idea of a female provider represented as the ocean, because the ocean, it gives us food in the form of fish and all the rest of it. Yes. So this archetype becomes embodied and is given a name and a representation, if you will. Okay. But this term to do with the water, when you look at even the human body makeup, we're 80% odd water. So that principle that has been identified external is in itself also an aspect of us.
Yes.
Why when you go for a reading in a Yoruba system, they start to give you names of these forces of nature based on your particular character temperament.
Right.
Yeah. So this term called gods, it's not an African saying that. It's somebody else who's giving that label.
Okay. All right. So we have to pass the language barrier if we're going to do this. African spirituality properly. I love that.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Well, we're here, kings and queens. Once again, give thanks for all of you who are watching right about now. We do ask you to like up the video. I want to send a special shout out to all the trolls in the chat. I love you, you know what I'm saying? And we may the blessings of our great African ancestors be on all of you, brothers and sisters, you know what I mean? All the trolls, yeah, in the chat right about now. We extend the love of all the African spiritual systems, yeah? May they be with you for the entirety of this particular conversation right here. All brothers and sisters who are here to learn, all brothers and sisters of whatever faith, whatever religion, who are here just to learn, yeah, and get a greater understanding of African spirituality, we welcome you. Yeah, this is not an exercise in conversion, yeah, or reversion. This is just teaching at the moment. We are expressing so that we may all come to a greater understanding. Yeah, and I've just asked Brother Dalian a question on the concept of the supreme deity or God in two African traditional spiritual systems, which are the Ifa and the Akom, the Akan spirituality and the Yoruba spirituality. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, we love that. So what we've affirmed is that Africans have a concept of the supreme deity, yeah? And this is expressed, you know, in many different names, and these names signify attributes, yeah, are designed to signify attributes of that one creator. Brother Dalian has exercised and given explanation to the different concepts, yeah, the different concepts of the creator. All right, and so we're gonna get into something else now, which is this idea of spirits, yeah, and Brother Dalian just gave an inclination to one just now, which is Yemaya, you know what I'm saying, or Yemonja, which is an Orisha, yeah. In Ifa, the spirits of nature, the principles of nature are referred to as Orisha, and in Akom they're referred to as Boson. Yeah. Now, Brother Dalian, just give a brief introduction, yeah, because as we said, practically all, if not all, African spiritual systems have these exemplifications of nature or personifications of nature. Just give an example as to what role or what's the significance, what's the philosophical significance of Boson and Orisha in African spirituality.
Yes, Brother ShakaRa, as you've already correctly mentioned, what we term the forces of nature is found in each and every tradition. In some traditions, it's been more systematically broken down and preserved. The best example being the Yoruba traditions, largely known as Ifa. Yeah, and this is why we find it as the main expression even in the diaspora. So what we call Haitian voodoo has large influence by the Yoruba tradition. What we call candomblé in Brazil, likewise the same. But what you find interestingly, even in the diasporic expressions, is that, yeah, so I'll give an example. There's an archetype called Nanaburuku or Nanabuluku. Yeah. Now, this Nanaburuku archetype represents the grandmother archetype, you know, the grandmother that loves their children unconditionally and would like to provide for all their needs. And Nanaburuku is not from the Yoruba pantheon. Yeah. You find this archetype in the Akan as well as in some parts of East Africa. Okay. But when you go to Brazil, you find Nanaburuku in the pantheon. Right. So there's that synergy, yeah, again, that dynamism within the African traditions, because there's no exclusivity as you find in some traditions or some religions which seem to think that they know it all, or that way is the only way there. In African spiritual traditions, you have this understanding that you can learn from all things and all things have equal value on what you do. So the natural forces, because nature is a key proponent or aspect of African tradition. And the reason why is because, as I said, the human person, if you will, is a reflection of nature itself. And I'll give you an example, right? Even what we need to survive at a basic level, this thing we call the air we breathe, ShakaRa. Yes. This air is a force of nature. It's not some man sitting on a chair somewhere in space that nobody can see, who's should we say prompting us to breathe. The very substance we need to stay alive is all around us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you hold your nose for 5 minutes. I don't care which religious book you're holding in your left hand, you'll be dead in 15 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Simple as that.
Yes, sir.
So you have this very tight connection with nature. And similarly, when you transition or you die and we put your body in the earth, years later, when we come back, we won't find what we used to call your body. We will find the earth. So the human individual is composed of these two aspects, what you might call your spirit and then your physical body.
Right, right.
Yeah. And it's this aspect of your spirit which makes you also a force of nature. And there are two things we can use the forces of nature for, which are very important in terms of practical applicability in our lives. The first is it assists you to learn a lot about the type of character or personality you have.
Right.
So if you go within the Yoruba system, for instance, you might find that maybe someone will do a reading and they say that person's ruling head is Sango.
Right.
Sango is an Orisha associated with thunder and lightning.
Yes,
He also happens to be known as an ancestor or a king or a ruler from a long time ago.
Yes, sir.
And this ruler was meant to have a very kind of what's the word? You know when you quickly lose your temper. I've forgotten the precise word for it, but yeah, they lose their temper quickly, and they don't, they're prone to kind of rash judgments, but they aim for justice or balance. And what you find is most people who have had this reading and been given this Orisha as their ruling head, you find that they exhibit very similar characteristics. Yeah. When you find somebody who might be given, let's say, your manja, you find this person to be kind of very the word is not passive, but very calm, very motherly in the way that they approach and want to do things for others.
Right.
Yes. So there are aspects of ourselves that have been identified also externally in natural processes.
Right.
Okay. And this is what leads us to know whether this person's ruling head might be, as I said, Shango or Yemanja or Ogun or Oshun. Yes, this is how they use this knowledge, because they're not talking about a force of nature that is only external to you. It also happens to be an aspect of your makeup, mentally and physically.
Yes. All right, cool. You know what? People are throwing a lot of questions in the chat, and we know that it's impossible for us to get through all the information in one session, so we're trying to touch on things, you know what I'm saying, and give space for development. But I will be coming to your questions, kings and queens, you know what I'm saying, and you will have an opportunity to go live if you so wish in not too short a time from now. So do stay tuned. We're gonna get in and get some information right now. But now that we're here, brother Isa, my good brother Isa in the chat is asking about Boson and whether they are considered literal beings, in the tradition, or whether they're considered kind of principles or spiritual entities, or a bit of both. He says about Boson, are they literal? By the way, Boson is the singular term. Abosom is the plural term. Are they literal beings, or are they spiritual principles also, or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both, because what we call the natural forces, as I just mentioned, are not just seen external to us, because you see them in the natural processes that go on external to ourselves, and you also find these processes that goes on within the human body. So it depends also on your level of initiation into the systems, because some knowledge is very powerful, and it's not everybody that knowledge gets given to. So yes, perhaps if you're new to it, you can only know them as literal, should we say, representations of people, or the way they're drawn. That Yemanya has to be this woman, blah blah blah. Shango has to be this man. But then when you get deeper into the knowledge, and most importantly, when you see how these forces start to communicate back with you through the rituals that you do, you know for yourself that you're not dealing with a literal representation, but rather a spiritual principle about a process.
So what I'm getting from what you're saying, bro, is that basically where African spirituality is based around our relationship with the natural forces, which are expressions of the ultimate natural force, which is the divine creator. Yes,
That's
and so
100%.
so we get to know the divine creator through our association, our interaction, and in our own and in our consciousness. Yeah, we give expression to these forces. It could be connected with it on the physical and the spiritual level. Yeah, so there's a name for water or river, spiritually speaking. There's a name for water or river, physically speaking. Yes, right.
Yes.
And then also within we identify the characteristics, yeah, of these forces, and we apply them to our own personalities as people.
Exactly that. And also, ShakaRa, to add to that, the community, it encourages community cohesion.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just for the individual.
If I said then, yeah, that the what we're looking at in terms of Orisha at the moment is if we were to use a modern European terminology, yeah, you could actually apply it to like frameworks of psychology.
Fully. 100%. And I'll be getting into some of that as and when you pop the question. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. So we're gonna come back to that in a second, yeah. And so we've just given a brief explanation as to what Abosom and Orisha are. I'm gonna ask you now, for the sake of people that are listening, just information-wise, just touch on some of the major Orisha and Abosom, yes, and what they represent, so that people can have a basic understanding.
Okay, sure. There's about 4 or 5 main which are very well known. Okay,
right.
So the first we start with Yemanja or Yemoja, which is quote unquote the deity of the ocean. Okay, often linked in and tied in with the notion of Mami Water or a mermaid, a being that lives in the waters. But Yemoja is meant to represent the attitudes or characteristics of caring. Of being sympathetic, of being empathetic, in the same way a mother would take care of her child. That is the archetype of Yemoja. Yeah. And then we have Sango, and Sango is connected to the energy of thunder and lightning, because Sango, as is traced to a ruler that used to be called Jakuta in what we now call Nigeria, was meant to be a king who was a bit jealous of, I think, another man's wife, and then send the man off to kind of, or he either murdered the man or send the man to war so the man could die, so he could try and appropriate the man's wife. And then he passed. Lightning struck him, or he hung himself on a tree, I believe. The stories differ slightly. But what Sango represents is that notion of justice and balance.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Yes, sir. Because he paid for his own deeds. Or his own misdeeds, rather. Yeah. So with Sango as well, there's that identification with what we call illumination. Okay, illumination meaning that point where you gain clarity. Because when you look at the way lightning performs in a storm, everywhere will be dark. But when lightning strikes, what happens to that area where we see the lightning bolt? It gets illuminated.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, where what we call Sango is not just some man. It also has to do with all these aspects of how we see that expression within nature, what it does. Okay. Yes. Then we have also possibly one of the most common one, the one who the Haitian Revolution is largely also attributed back to, is what we call Ogun.
Yes.
And Ogun is, again, in quotes, the god of war, which is not really the case. Ogun deals with notions of being strategic, notions of working hard to see victory. Okay, because first and foremost, Ogun is the Orisha of success.
Yes.
So we also deal with, because Ogun is associated with iron, we deal with the notion also of transformation, because we get iron as an ore from the ground. And then we can transform this piece of ore into, you name it, spoons, forks, knives, jewelry, the whole nine.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So again, if you only look, we have Oshun. And Oshun is this notion of this very beautiful lady. And this beautiful lady is the goddess, again, quote unquote, of rivers, you know, and Oshun is this very, as I said, very beautiful lady, and she's able to attract the things that she wants. But again, what we call Oshun deals with the notion of attraction. What many people now will willingly jump on and say, oh, you know, whether they're Muslim or even Christian, I believe in the law of attraction. You know, they've gone to read this book, The Secret, or they've read Napoleon Hill, The Power of Positive Thinking, and they think these are new ideas. But this archetype, this notion of attraction is embodied in this form the Yoruba will call Oshun. In the Akan system, there's a river too, and they call it Nana Esi. Yeah. So the same idea, but two different communities, they have a different name for it. But in terms of what it does, attracting prosperity and attracting goodness into your life is what Oshun represents. So yeah, these are some of the most popular ones and the ideas. And actually, one that's also very important is Oya. Oya is the energy of change. Okay, and it has to do with the winds and storms as well. Okay, so again, what we're dealing with, as I already mentioned, you know, what we call the air or wind or whatever you want to call it, oxygen, which is an essential part of what you call the air that allows us to live, is a constituent of this, and we find this even in our very blood cells. So if you want change, you're dealing with that energy. That's the energy you start to invoke.
Right. You know, bro, you know, what I'm getting from what you're saying at the moment as well is that for many people, in their spiritual system, they will have things like angels and other beings that they believe in, that identify different principles. You know what I'm saying? And these kinds of. So whereas what you're saying might sound strange, because you know, because people are not used to having these ideas expressed in this manner, especially as it's created, as it's associated with every day around us, the natural forces of the universe, where it's like, because of our psychology, it's more easier for us to believe in things that are separate and distinct and exist just completely outside of this universe. You know what I'm saying? So within that, there's a couple things, but I'm gonna ask you a question at the end of this, just to play on some of the things that you said. All right. One of the things that in terms of Sango, how Sango is represented in and Ogun is represented in the diaspora, in the Caribbean. You didn't mention Eshu, but I'm going to mention Eshu. In fact, give us an explanation of Eshu before I go on. Let's give an explanation of Eshu.
Eshu is basically an energy of manifestation. So Eshu is interesting because Eshu is the one who the colonial enterprise used to substantiate and basically create this fear around African spirituality today. Because, and I'll give you the same example in the Akan as well, because Eshu, what Eshu represents is, because firstly and foremost, in the African spirituality, there is an acknowledgement that there are at least two realms in simultaneous existence: the physical realm, which we experience with our physical senses, and then there's also the spiritual realm. And that is not in some far place beyond the sky. No. It's in our very space. So this is why we can dream and get messages from there. And Eshu is this energy that connects both worlds. So Eshu is the energy that can bring things from the spiritual realm into the physical manifestation, or is equivalent. So what most missionaries did was, it was easy to just say, oh, that is the concept of the devil, the same way we have it in the Abrahamic religion. But it's not. Eshu becomes a concept of teaching. And in teaching, in life, you don't only just learn positive things. Sometimes you need to go through a negative experience to experience something positive. So it's not a one, if you want to call it one strict explanation of Eshu. Eshu can be many things.
Okay. All right, beautiful. So and I was going on to explain now that there's one of the major ways in which African tradition is preserved in the Caribbean, although it's watered down very much commercially at the moment, is carnival. Yeah, and when you delve deep into the tradition, yeah, in terms of Ogun, because Ogun, one of his attributes is that he clears the way, he removes obstacles, yeah, from the way, you know, on the roads and them kind of things. That he clears the roads, yeah, and the carnival tradition in the Caribbean is about the old people, yeah, especially enslaved people in the Caribbean who were marginalized, holding space on the road and clearing the road, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so manifesting that Ogun energy. So you find a lot of Ogun, in carnival, one of the major things that they do, especially with Juve, yeah, is beat iron, yeah, beating on the iron. Yeah, that's a representation of Ogun there as well. But at the same time, one of the things that Sango represents, as the tradition is evolved, is like masculine expression of drumming and dancing. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So Sango is a dance, but a masculine dance energy. You know what I'm saying. That is manifested on during that as well. You know what I'm saying. And at some point we're gonna get into the idea of Ashe and Ori. Yeah, and how Eshu is the keeper of the Ashe in terms of, you know.
That's right. That's right. Hence why I mentioned spirit of manifestation. But when we get there, I will elaborate further.
Give us an explanation of Kweku and Nancy.
Well, you know, Kweku Anansi, Anansi is very interesting, you know, because even in Ghana, as they know Anansi now, Anansi has been, for lack of a better word, devalued to becoming a character in just stories. Yes. This is how Anansi is treated in Ghana right now. And for as far as I've been a youth and grown. But we also happen to know that, for instance, if you go to Cuba, in an area known as Matanzas, they have a society there which venerates Anansi as an expression of the supreme being, and to a degree even an expression also of what we call a shu, because Anansi is a master teacher and it will use sometimes tricks for you to learn what you need to learn. So we, and also from other scholars such as Dr. Bempa, we come to find that in ancient times on the continent, who we call or what we call Anansi was again an expression of the supreme, because when you think about Anansi is also a representation of the spider. And what do spiders do when they create their web? They create their own world within which they live. They create their own reality. Is this not one of the things we attribute to what we call God? That God made this, apparently, this existence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we can see that correlation directly, but over time they've come to lose this understanding of Anansi, and Anansi has just become some kind of trickster in folk tales, if you will, on the continent mainly. But in the diaspora, we still have that preservation of that original thought.
Definitely, and that's why in me sense of connecting us to our African roots, because again, in the sense of, and that's representing stories, the importance of that is the role that storytelling played in the tradition, because wisdom is transmitted through story. You know what I'm saying? So it's a learning experience, and so you have this concept of Anansi Sem. Correct me if I'm wrong, but which are the stories and the proverbs associated with Anansi, you know what I'm saying, and the wisdom that is transmitted through those stories. But that became particularly important to us in the Caribbean because of the experiences that we were having. So Anansi being a trickster, and somebody who was able to basically outsmart forces or beings that were considered stronger than him, became a representation of our position. It was like, for lack of a better analogy, it was like the David and Goliath story. You see what I'm saying? Because if Brother Nancy can outsmart Brother Tiger and Brother Lion, then outsmart the slave master right about now from where we are. You know what I mean? So these are analogies, you know, that we can definitely. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's get into some stuff now. And we're gonna open up the line shortly, kings and queens. I'm gonna be sharing that link in about 10 minutes time here, so you can come on and ask Brother Dalian your questions. I know that we're going very fast through some information. We're not even gonna get too deep into everything today. You know, it's impossible. It's like if I was to ask you to define and explain your entire religion, you know, the entirety of your religion in the space of an hour, I'm sure most of you have some difficulties with that. So we're just dealing with some of the essential principles. And one of the essential principles that Brother Dalian has laid out so far is the concept of the supreme deity. Another is the concept of the spirits, the forces, the divine forces in nature, and how that relates to ourselves individually and communally. And another one which he mentioned, what we're going to go into now, is the concept of ancestors. And this is a sticking point because many people say that Africans worship their ancestors, and in fact, you know, phrases, and this was put to me on Sunday at Speaker's Corner about speaking to your dead ancestors. Dalian, why do Africans speak to our dead ancestors? What's that about?
Yeah, well, you know, for the uninformed, you, the individual ShakaRa, you're not just ShakaRa. There's a piece of your father in you. There's a piece of your mother in you. There's a piece of your grandmother, grandfather, great-great-great-great-grand. Basically, you're just a culmination of all the genes of all these people who came before you. So how exactly can you even maintain that you're different from them?
Right.
Yeah. Let me give you another example. In 2013, Emory University in the United States now conclusively proves through their studies that particular personality types that we have or phobias that we have are not even our own. They are inherited through the genetic information that makes us up. So you actually are your ancestors.
Do you understand? I believe they call that psychogenetic transmission. That's one term.
Oh yeah, and then not only that, now they're also now calling it this retention of these memories and aspects of your psyche. They call it chromosomic memory. There's a whole big field now called epigenetics. Which has been going on for a while. And what epigenetics does is that what they're trying to do in a laboratory is that they're able to switch on particular genetic markers in your DNA. So let's say you are a calm being, but I don't know, somebody wants you to have the same characteristics as Hitler, because maybe Hitler was one of your great ancestors. They can switch on parts of your chromosomes such that you attain that personality.
Yes.
This is how deep this research is going now. They are calling what Africans call ancestral veneration. It just has a different title. There's chromosomic memory, there's epigenetics. What's the term that you just used about the retention of all these attributes?
Psychogenetic transmission.
Right. So it's what is transferred from your ancestor into you. Whereas people need big laboratory equipment to make these things happen, because Africans have had this understanding for millennia, we also know that you can actually perform the same thing through ritual. Because there's no ritual you start first where you do not invoke the essence of your ancestors.
Right. So why though, Brother Dalian? Because many people will be listening saying, well, why don't we just go straight to God? Why do we need to our ancestors?
Yeah, but as I just mentioned very early at the beginning, what you call God is your first ancestor.
Right.
Yeah, and look, many religions actually expound the same concept by in different ways. I believe my short time in studying Islam, one of the proclamations I think is something along the lines of nothing exists outside of Allah. I believe it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Something along those lines. So if nothing can exist outside of Allah, then you yourself, you are that entity, are you not? Because nothing can exist outside of it. Everything in existence is it.
Within it, yes.
But then they put this caveat and say you're separated. You know, oh no, you can't be it. You're no. In the African understanding, you are an expression of that first source of creation. So God is your first ancestor.
All right. So explain this now, because so for example, you have many traditions here. There's your personal lineage, but then there's a communal lineage. Yes. It's called a gungun. Yeah, the community or society ancestors. Now because commonly growing up here, I understood in Akom is the Nsamanfo, or Nana Manfo, which are the revered ancestors. But there's another terminology that I come across in this book by Kofi Bempa. Nana Nom, I can't remember the terminology. It's gone out my head.
Nana Nom Samanfo. Yeah. Nana Nom Samanfo.
It's correct.
Yeah, it's correct. It's correct. Yeah. It just basically means transitioned ancestors. That's all it means.
Right. So you have your personal lineage ancestors, but then there are also communal ancestors. And then you have exemplified with the state of Nana in the Akom. Can you explain this idea of revered communal ancestors and what that represents?
Sure. So to understand that or give that context, let's remember there's also the spiritual concept of Ubuntu. Yeah,
right.
And this idea of I am because you are, and basically that no person can exist on their own. We're all just different manifestations, again, as I said, of the all. So we share many things. Okay, so you have this aspect of what we call your spirit or your mind, and that's related to a larger consciousness. What some people will also again call God, because it's a universal intelligence. Yeah, and so really, everybody is related to a degree. Everybody. Because there is that common source, if you want to call it that. But then we have this also, this individual expression that we call ourselves. So Nananum Samanfo it just represents your blood line. It can represent that, as you said, your direct bloodline. But then also you have ancestors who have lived and made the community great. So I'll give you an example, both in ancient times and now. So in the Akan system, there used to be a great I can't even find the word. I don't want to use the word traditional priest. There used to be a great, he was a prophet, because the word Akom actually means to prophesy, to be able to predict what will come out in the future. That's what Akom means. Okay. So, and this Okomfo, where the word Akom comes from, was known by the name of Okomfo Anochi. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, what Okomfo Anochi did is the one who is credited with bringing down the golden stool, into which he put the spirit of unity of the Asante people into the stool. Okay, saying that if this stool were to be taken, that nation would collapse. But because he did so much for the community, on his transitioning, you see, the person who can do much for others, not even directly related to them, is given the same, if you want to call it, title as be a deity. When I say a deity, I mean they're given a higher place in the understanding of the people, simply because they did not just work for the interest of their community and their family alone, they did it for the whole community. Okay, in the same way that if you look at nature, if there's a mango tree there, ShakaRa, and I need to go pluck a mango, when you get to that tree, the tree is not going to say, oh, you're not Dalian, so you can't pluck a mango, will you? It gives to you as it gives to me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is an unconditional expression of love. So the ancestors who are made exemplary ancestors are made so because they have shown unconditional love to everyone else. They have expressed what we can see expressed in nature as a manifestation of God, that it gives freely, willingly, and without expectations to everyone.
Okay. So what I hear in what you're saying is that in terms of the ideals and the principles of the spiritual system, there are those of us who are exemplary in our expression. I'm saying, and so the systems themselves have ways of elevating those individuals as an example for the rest of us, not only in the life of the individual, but in the life of the descendants of those individuals.
That's right. Exactly that.
That is beautiful.
Exactly that. Yeah. You know, because they've done more for more people.
Yes, yes, yes. That's beautiful. All right. We're going to go quickly now so that we can get to open up the lines here. But I want to touch on this idea of destiny of the soul and the purpose here. Now, there are concepts, as you mentioned before, there are concepts. By the way, is there a term for Ori in Akom or in Tree?
Yeah, you will call that your Hebre. Here, there's a bit of debate. So, J.B. Dankwa, who was one of the first Ghanaian scholars to write on the Akan conception of God, called it the Kra.
Very problematic guy, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because, you know, the thing is that Dankwa, yeah, he was one of those who opposed Nkrumah because he even had the idea that we would be better with the British leading us. But then, you know, years later, we come to find that the whole family of Dankwa were on the payroll of the CIA. Yeah, and we're going that far back. Did you understand? So it's that whole kind of elites within society and how they work together with others against the interest of the larger community. Okay, he was I believe a Pentecostal, so he wasn't really raised in the traditions. He again was speaking on it like a foreigner. But then one of the, I guess, and it's understandable that we make this mistake. One of his key things that he tried to do was he tried to find Christian points and map the Akan points to them exactly. You know, as a way of, in a sense, saying that, oh, look, it's the same. So, I don't know, you can't call us barbarians or savages or whatever else. So, I can understand maybe his intent, but in doing so, he limited the depth of the expressions of his own traditions.
Right.
You understand? Because as much as they may be similar, they were even more complex. Yeah. So going back to the notion you mentioned, your divine destiny or your life purpose.
Yes.
Okay. Dankwa calls it your Kra. Yeah. And even in Ghana now, most people will tell you is your Kra too, or your Inkrabia. Yeah, that's another way of saying the same thing. Right, what Dr. Bempa posits in his research is that it's not that term because Kra also means a cat. Okay. Yeah, you call a Kra that means that's your cat. Do you understand? So his I guess positioning was that no, it's rather called Hebre. Yeah, and why I will give Dr. Bempa, should we say, that level of understanding is Dr. Bempa comes from a line of people who I've forgotten the exact term now, but basically they wash the spirit of the king. Right. So you know, in the traditions, you can get spiritually dirty, and this is what can bring a lot of, should we say, bad luck and other experiences that seem to block you from goodness. So you have to wash your spirit quite regularly, because you pick up all this kind of funky energy from other people you interact with on a day-to-day, or some even send you that energy on purpose. Okay, so Bempa comes from that, if you want to call it, indigenous community. Yeah, his knowledge is coming directly from those who practice it, not those who've gone to Oxford and Cambridge and kind of have, if you want to call it, a second personality going on. Understand?
Yes.
But in all of this, ShakaRa, it doesn't matter, because what we're dealing with is we know that concept exists. So whether we found the wrong term or the right term, for me, I focus on, is that concept actually there? And we know that it is. Some may argue whether it's called Kra or your Hebre. To me, it doesn't matter. We know this is a concept that is in the tradition. Okay. And in the Yoruba, they call it the Ori.
Right. So what is Ori now? What is Ori or Hebre?
Yeah, it's basically the highest form of self you can attain while your spirit inhabits this physical body.
Okay.
So I repeat that. It's the highest form of consciousness you can cultivate while you're in this body. Because one of the understandings is that before your spirit, takes on this body that you have and comes into the world as a physical being, it makes a contract with the Supreme that when I come, this is what I'm going to do to help the state of humanity.
Right.
Yeah. And then manifest, you know, and you're born as a child. So your Hebrew or your Ori is that state of you becoming into your fullness. You basically have, you know, there's this term that floats around now called your God consciousness.
Yes.
So that means you are risen beyond all the man-made ideas, such that you can overstand or oversee the bigger picture. That's what your Ori or your Hebrew is. And once you get to that state, you've attained, unity with what we call God.
Okay. And then what is there so Ashe, as we understand it, is the life force energy in the Yoruba, Ashe. Is there a Akom or Akan or tree equivalent of Ashe?
Yeah, it's called your Susum.
Susum. So that's spirit, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So in that sense now, we have this concept called Iwapele, in the Ifa, which is balanced character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there an Akom equivalent to that?
Yeah, it's called Obrapa. Iwapele suggests the notion of good character. Yeah. Because again, let's draw it back into this idea of how it connects with the idea of the supreme being. So by cultivating that good character, this will mean you're not stepping on other people's toes. You're always thinking of other people as well in terms of how your actions affect them.
Right.
Okay. So again, you're manifesting like you're this notion of God, which generally provides good things for us. We have water to drink, to live. We have fruits that we can eat, all given freely. Okay. So this thing acts as what we will, it's like a good character of a person, thinking of everybody's needs and providing. That's good character there, right?
Right. Yes. So go on. No, continue.
So in the Akan system as well, Obrapa also means the same thing. It just means living a good life.
Yes. Okay. So how do these concepts then relate to what one might call the destiny of the human soul, or our purpose of life as human beings?
It's only by cultivating that type of living that you will be able to attain that level of consciousness. Right.
So all of these principles are there to give us guides for how to live our lives. Yeah. And so through doing that, we achieve, we fulfill our Ori, or our purpose of consciousness, and we achieve Iwapele, or good character. So this is the purpose of all of these things. Yeah. Okay. And we have go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say this is all. This is why we have to be careful not to regulate African spirituality into where the religions have gone, which becomes this highly mystified thing that you can never achieve.
Right.
Do you understand? African spirituality is just about practical living, not just with yourself, but with everything around you.
Okay. All right. So let's end on this then. We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna open up the lines. So to say now, like, how do we apply all of this stuff that we've outlined so far, practically speaking? Give our viewers, our listeners, some ideas of how all of these things are applied practically in the standards of African people, and how they affect people's lives. And this is important now, to put this into context, because of the characterizations of African spirituality as witchcraft and devil worship and them kind of things there, where people go to witch doctors to do bad things to other people. And I would say we really want to give an example coming from the tradition, in terms of how these things are actualized communally in the living standards of people.
So tell me what was the question? How does it?
Yeah, how are all these things applied practically? What's the practical applications of these things?
The practical applications are numerous. And the first thing we saw is greatest application in what we call the Haitian Revolution, where it allowed everybody to be of a certain mind, such that they could attain what people will now say it's just not possible when you think about it. But because everybody was operating of a certain mindset, There was unity in the consequent actions. Yeah, it's not like now where you find, you know, within the African trying to do this, another person, there's no unity. It gave them unity because they all worked with similar principles. Yeah, everybody understood the guiding philosophy and how to actualize it via practice. One of the first thing is at communal level, it will give a unity beyond. The second thing is that really for the individual, you see, because most of these things work on a mental level. Yeah. Firstly, it raises your feelings of self-esteem because you get to know yourself on a certain intimate level that nothing else can teach you about. Because it gives you a certain level of deep reflection about yourself. Yeah. So it helps you to know yourself better. Yeah. So if you know that, for instance, you have all what we call the natural forces within yourself, then even if you're in a, should we say, a business interaction or a social interaction, firstly, you start to see the characteristics manifesting in some of the others you interact with. So, for instance, you might be in the meeting and you notice, first of all, okay, this person is an issue spirit, okay, because of the way they're behaving or because of the color they're wearing that day. So, African spirituality now becomes like a guide that you have with you all the time. And it helps you notice particular details that many people will miss. Yeah, so it's very useful because you might be talking to someone and they think they have one on you because, you know, they're thinking something you're not. But you have a certain deep level of practice, it will surprise you. You can see what the person is about just by looking at them. Yeah, so this is where those archetypes become important. So on that level of practical application, it's immense. It's immense at a personal level and a collective level. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, kings and queens. We started at 8 o'clock. I started asking questions at about 1:15 that hour, and now it's 9:30. We are going to open up the lines, for everyone to come on, So I'm going to share the link now, but there are rules, please come on with your mic muted, please, so that we don't have a million people on the line at once, making up a whole heap of noise. And if you've got a contribution, I'm going to come to you as much as possible in the order that you enter the chat. And we will allow some level of interaction between callers as well, as much as possible, but do bear in mind that it is a show, and so we're going to try and maintain a positive flow of conversation. All questions are welcome, and all we ask is that people demonstrate and approach the conversation with respect. I do love, once again, the trolls in the audience. I do want to give thanks, especially though, to all the brothers and sisters who are not African spiritualists, but are approaching the conversation respectfully. It is not incumbent upon you that you agree with everything that's being said for being here whilst you're here. This is not a necessity, but we do appreciate your presence and your willingness to learn and engage respectfully. And through these dialogues, we will develop greater understanding of each other. You know what I'm saying? But if you're here trolling, we love you same way. And I'm sharing the link right about now, kings and queens. Click the link if you'd like to join the conversation and ask Brother Dalian a question. At this point, Brother Dalian, I'm going to ask if Sister Verona is in the house, and if she wants to share a contribution, she can feel free to.
Sure, brother, go ahead.
Is she there?
Yeah, she's online, dealing with the internet side of things. I don't know.
All right, no. So if you wanted to say something, feel free to say something. You know what I'm saying? But
Okay, yeah. So good. Yep. Cool.
You get me?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get some calls in at the moment. You know what I'm saying? Just come forward if you want to, sis. And whilst the callers are coming in, we'll get those callers in shortly. So the link is in the description. It is in the chat, kings and queens, for anybody who wants to come live. Don't feel scared. Nobody's gonna put no bad spirit on you. You know what I'm saying? Voodoo is beautiful. Beautiful. So we give thanks, you get me? We give thanks. And even if you're not an African spiritualist, yeah, we only give blessings here on ShakaRa Speaks and Ancestral Voices. So, you know what I mean? Just that, yeah, unless you're an oppressor of African people. So if you're not an oppressor of African people, then feel free to come through on the line. Only blessings shall be bestowed upon you, kings and queens. All right. So the link is in the chat. I'm going to share it again. And yeah, you can feel free to interact with myself and Brother Dalian Adofo. You know what I mean? So we've got one person in the chat right about now. Is that Kilindoni?
Yes, it is.
Greetings, my brother. Greetings, and welcome to ShakaRa Speaks, featuring Ancestral Voices, African Spirituality. What the is it? Yeah. So yeah, you've got a contribution or a question?
Yes. Can you hear me first of all?
We can hear you clearly. And brothers and sisters in the chat, just click the 9 button if you can hear Brother Kilindoni, you know, most loudly and clearly. Yeah, just click the 9 button if you can hear Brother Kilindoni loud and clear. And yeah, we've got Rain in the chat as well. Rain, keep your mic muted for now, please. I'll ask you respectfully and welcome. Click the 9 button if you can hear Brother Kilindoni. Go ahead, Kilindoni.
Yes. Okay. First of all, well, I'm calling from Ivory Coast, you know, in Africa.
You're in Africa right now.
Yes, right now. Yes.
Hey! Yeah, we like that. ShakaRa.
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So what happened is I didn't get the whole show from the beginning, but I got most of it, maybe about 30, 40 minutes.
Yes,
anyway, this is an area that has been interested me a lot for a long time, and I've done some research about it. So first of all, there are some things I would like to answer from the discussion you've been having.
Yes, sir.
So, for example, there was a question the brother he was talking about the West African religion, the Yoruba and the Akan and all that.
Yes.
And you asked the question is, why can't you not go to God directly? And the answer is very simple. Different people in different places come with different answers to answer these difficult questions in their own way. So, for example, Africans are not the only ones that came up with intermediaries between us and God. Roman Catholicism is full of intermediaries. All the saints, what are they?
Yes.
Okay, all the saints. There's a saint for everything you can think of. There's a saint for lovers. There's a saint for, I don't know, for warriors. There's a saint for teachers. There's a saint for even for prostitutes. All right, and that saint is an intermediary.
Yes.
It's not so. So the Africans, we came with the same answer a long time ago. I'll go another example. Even for example, among the Muslims, the Sunni Muslims, they don't have so many saints, but the Shia Muslims have got saints.
Yes.
In Shia Islam, they do have saints. So they came up with a different answer. So if somebody comes to say, in Africa, why do you have ancestors intermediaries? So these are our saints. The same way as the Chinese have got a similar concept.
Yes,
right? So that's one thing I like to mention. And also, the issue about religion, you're talking about the practicality of it. It is extremely important. People we don't know. In my own, the little research I've done, the superficial research I've done, if you look right now in the world, the countries that are doing very, very well in terms of development, most of them are in Asia right now. If you look at the Asian countries like India, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, what ties them together? All of them together. Yes, they're in Asia, okay? But there's an interesting point. India is one of the few places in Asia that retain their religion. There are many Christians in India. There are many Muslims in India. But predominantly, the people in India follow their own native religion.
Yes.
So there is an issue. Now, if you go back again, I can give another example. If you go to Korea, again, there are a lot of Korea. Korea has got lots of Christians in Korea. But the majority of Koreans are not Christians. They follow their own religion, or they're not religious. If you go to Japan, it is the same story. Japan, they follow their own religions. They have not taken on. They have not taken on Christianity, which is a fallen religion, nor have they taken on Islam, and they're also doing very well. But in the same part of the world, if you look at countries that took on other religions, for example, not very far from Korea, there's Philippines. Everybody knows Philippines. Philippines is 90-something% Catholic, and Philippines is backwards compared to the other to its neighbors. Okay, there is Indonesia. Indonesia is just a chip and a part away from Singapore. Parts of it from Singapore. You cannot compare the two. Singapore is miles ahead of Indonesia. Indonesia is predominantly Muslim, as you know. So there is an issue. There is a practicality here that okay, it is not proven yet, but in my opinion, when you leave your religion and you take on other people's religion, it does affect how your society progresses from there.
Right. Give facts for that, Brother Kinindoli. I'm gonna ask you a quick question, yeah. You can feel free to stay on the line after this. I will, if a lot of people come on, I will ask people to leave the chat so that other people can come up if they want to, right? But as soon as you're in Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, as they say, you know, at some point, my brother, we have to wage a campaign to rename Ivory Coast, you know, because that colonial name, you have to let go of that colonial name.
I'm actually from East Africa. I'm from Tanzania, but I'm here now.
Tanzania. All right. Okay. I was going to ask you to identify some of the indigenous spiritual systems in Cote d'Ivoire, but you can do that for East Africa and Tanzania if you want.
I have one better. I'll go. I have one better. I'm from East Africa, but I've got connections from Sudan. So the one I've studied the most is the one from Southern Sudan. So let me tell you one story. It will be different because Africa is very diverse. So actually, when you say about African spirituality, Africa is probably one of the most diverse places you can think of. It is probably more, just as diverse or more diverse than India. India is very diverse when it comes to spirituality. Yes. Now, the one I will tell you about is, I will tell you the creation stories according to the people, they're called the Dinka from Southern Sudan.
Yes, beautiful.
Now, the issue is this. Most people in Africa, including the people in the diaspora, we have taken on Christianity, a foreign religion. It's not our religion. We have taken on Islam. Again, it is a foreign religion. I'll speak about them later. It's a foreign religion. It has nothing to do with us. Now, all of these, Christianity and Islam, they've borrowed the creation myth from Mesopotamia. They borrowed this creation myth, the story of Adam and Eve. It is not original from the Jews and it's not original to the Arabs. They borrowed it. But let me tell you the story, the creation story according to the Dinka. And before I go to the creation story, let me explain what the Dinkas are. The Dinkas, they are cattle keepers. They keep cattle. All right? Their life revolves around cattle. I mean, to a Dinka man or woman in society, cattle are everything. In fact, people and their language, because their language in terms of describing cattle, it is so rich. For example, in English, you might say a white bull with black patches. In Dinka, you would have one word to say that. All right? Yeah. So anyway, so their story is this: there was God. They have one God in their belief. There is one God. It's called the Sky God, Nyalich. It may be similar to some of my brother from West Africa. There, from some of the Yoruba gods, but they have a Sky God called Nyalich. He's the supreme God. Okay. So after creating the people, the Dinkas, and of course, when we talk to the people, the Dinka, and one thing, everybody, when you follow your religion, you are the chosen people. The Jews are the chosen people because they follow their religion. So the Hindus are the chosen people because they follow their religion. So naturally, so naturally the Dinka, we are the chosen people because God speaks to us and he speaks to us in our language, not in anybody else's language. Yes, sir. So God created the people, the Dinka. When you say the people, we talk about Dinka. And then he sent a messenger to them. A messenger is a prophet. He sent a prophet to them to pass on the message. So first of all, he gave the Dinkas fire. So I believe fire came directly from God. He gave them pegs, for when you want to tie something down on the ground. So the pegs came down from God. He gave them rope. Rope came down directly from God. He gave them a calabash. I don't know if you know what a calabash is. It's like a container, a traditional container.
We know.
You know, so he gave them a calabash. All these things came from God directly. Okay. And then after that, he sent the words to the messenger. He said, tell the people that for the next 7 days, I'm going to give you cattle. All right. So there will be herds of cattle coming from east to west that are passing in Dinka land. All right. Now, for the first 6 days, you are to keep the cattle. So it happened. So it became, on the first day, the cattle came, the Dinkas kept them, and because they had the ropes, they could tie them down. Because they had the calabash, they could milk the cows. All right. And this continued for 6 days. Then the message was, the herd on the 7th day, on the last day, the Dinkas were supposed to let these animals go and not keep them. But the message they were given, is they kept all the cows, including the one on the 7th day, the one they were not supposed to keep. Right. And God came to them. God became angry, the same way as the God of the Old Testament gets angry. God gets angry and he started asking them, hey, you guys, what have you guys done? You're not supposed to keep these cows.
Yes.
And then the people turn around and say, no, the messenger you sent us is the one who told us to keep these cows. So immediately the messenger was punished. The messenger was turned into a dog. All right, that's what. And at the same time, God now was telling the people, he said, look, the reason I told you not to keep the cows on the 7th day is these cows are the ones that contains flies. They contain tsetse flies. They contains all these kind of things that bother human beings. These are the cows that you're not supposed to keep. But because you have kept these cows, well, that is your lot now. So you'll have to survive with these cows, all the nice cows, including the flies, including the tsetse flies, including the mosquitoes and everything else. There is a similarity. It's not the same story, but there is a similarity to the Adam and Eve story.
Right.
And there is a similarity to the Pandora story from the Greek mythology, the story of Pandora's box. You know, the story where Pandora was supposed to fell asleep and somebody opened and everything came out.
Yes.
All the evils came out, including hope, and eventually hope came out.
Yes.
And this story is, I know the time is short, so I can't go to the whole story. But this story goes on to explain how the neighboring tribes came about.
Right.
It explains from God that said, you guys came here. It explains how the different clan within the, the different clans, because the Dinka tribe is organized according to clans. How the different clans came about, because some of the clans are related.
Right.
And some of the clans have got a common ancestor. So there's a story that one brother killed another brother. He was chased away and he went away and he became a different tribe. Right. Another story is there was a family fight and people said, no, you guys need to move away, and they became a different clan. So according to the Dinka and their stories, and their creation story, it explains their world 100%. Right. Where they came from, where the neighbors come from, and what everybody else has. Okay, beautiful. Right? So these things now, unfortunately for us, fortunately for the Dinka, I met a certain elderly gentleman. He did research. He was an old man, much older than I am. He's probably in his 80s now or 90s. He was a top-notch lawyer, but he went back to the village, spoke to the elders, and he wrote down these stories before the stories disappeared. So I have a copy of this book. Yes. Okay, but it is extremely important to understand where you come from. So now, unfortunately, our Muslim brothers and sisters, as much as I love them, they have taken on creation stories that are not ours. Okay, you're taking the story of Adam and Eve and things like that. This is not our stories. And naturally, as much as we try to do, whether we like it, eventually, religion becomes a tool to be used. The Christians in there, if you go back in the history of Christianity, the Romans used it. In fact, Romans created the Christianity that you find, for example, Roman Catholicism. It is called Roman Catholicism for a reason, because the Romans created it. And they used this thing to consolidate the empire. Unfortunately, for many of our brothers, particularly the brothers in the diaspora, where they live, many of them came from Christian background. They leave Christianity, going to Islam, thinking Islam is better. Islam is just as Christianity. There is no difference. It is a religion attached to an empire, attached to an Arab empire. And that's what happened. This is historical. For example, I will tell you, North Africa, and Islam is very bad, because when Islam conquers you, it takes it replaces your religion, and where it can, it replaces your language. So, for example, in places like Morocco,
not to dampen your spirit, you know, but you and not even that I disagree with the information that you're dropping. It's only today we want to focus on African spirituality,
No problem. That's it.
But on another day we can go into those issues there and detail.
Now I know your program. I will participate fully. Next time I know the program this is the first time I'm on. I will participate.
I've given you a lot more time than I might have if I didn't know that you was in the Ivory Coast. So I give thank you for your presence. I'm excited about that. So but I'm gonna ask you to mute your mic for now, so I can bring in somebody else.
I will do that. I'm muting.
Sir. Give thanks. Thank you for that. Yes, kings and queens, Ivory Coast in the house. Brother Dalian, Sister Verona, do you want to share a word in response to our brother right there before I go on to Brother M.A.?
No, not particularly. I give thanks to the brother for sharing, his creation story, for lack of a better word, if you will. And I think what he does is exemplify the point that we've been talking about, ShakaRa, which is when we start talking about these things, even which we call creation stories and the other, that it's time for us to look beyond the superfluous aspects of it, the superficial, what it looks like at the top, and see the symbolism because the symbolism is what teaches us. Because you see, again, the symbology, it gives us a principle that becomes or has a practical use in the way we live life. You understand? But this idea of creation stories, again, it can put us back in this mental lock of a religious behavior. Okay, what we might call spirituality is an opportunity for you to express what is within. Yeah, so as he was talking about, you know, the creator archetype in the Dinka tradition, giving cows and then the people disobeying. Well, what we're looking at really is a story about ethics, about listening. And then when you don't do these things, the quote unquote bad things that result. These are the usefulness of what we're looking for. Again, all these so-called creation stories are to give us an understanding of our existence, their existential stories. Okay? Yeah, so the lessons within it are what we should be learning, not necessarily because we have a good sounding story.
Yes, beautiful. I love that. There's so much in that, you know, in the sense of the fact that being you know, kind of dedicated and immersed in your own spirituality, it helps you to make sense of your world, from that perspective. If that and if I tap into what the brother is the point that the brother is making, is that we're kind of robbed of that understanding, so that we're seeing the world through the eyes of other people, whilst we've lost. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I tapped into it from what the brother was saying. Give thanks for that, Brother Dalian. Brother M.A. Brother M.A., are you there? I know sometimes it takes a while to unmute the mic, you know. You get me? Brother M.A., are you there? All right, I'm gonna go on to Brother Rain. Brother M.A., or is it brother or sister? I'm not even sure if it's brother or sister, you know. M.A., if you can hear me, when you get back, just type in the back chat so I know that you're back, and then we'll get you on at some point. Rain, are you with us?
Yes, hi, ShakaRa, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. I'm fine, thank you. You wanted to contribute to the proceedings?
Yes, sir. So I'm just to introduce myself. I'm a Sikh, but I live in Canada, and I was interested in the Eastern religions of, you know, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, but I was also interested in African spirituality. Because I saw many parallels, and the thing that I noticed was that if you look at what the brother Kilindoni said, I completely agree with his statements. That if you go to Japan, you will see the traditional religion of Shinto, and you see Buddhism, and they don't reject the traditional religion of Shintoism. If you go to China, you'll see the Confucian was the traditional religion, and then when Buddhism came, the Buddhists didn't, you know, condemn or abolish Confucian. So Confucianism is fused with the Buddhism. And I was thinking, because if you look at the African great religion, it's very sad, because I think there's been like a genocide where the traditional religions of Africa have been erased or being close to erasure. You know, the common culture, if you ask African religions, the average person can't even think of anyone, right? And I was wondering, how would you go about in trying to restore or trying to promote African spirituality? Maybe you can get some lessons on how maybe the Hindus in India, the Chinese, the Japanese, how they kind of maintained or promoted their belief systems. And I think as long as the average African doesn't have a pride in their traditional religions, their minds will be colonized by foreign religions. You know, and if a foreign religion comes to you, then you're already in a secondary position.
Yes. That's a beautiful question. I've got a lot to say on that question, but I'm not the speaker today. You know, I'm the host, so I'm gonna hand it over to my erudite and illustrious brother. Yeah, the gentleman is asking, how can we restore? Yeah, you know, traditional African religion, so to speak, or African spirituality. You know what I'm saying? To a state of respectability and application.
How can you take out the inferiority complex that has become embedded in the African mind? So when you talk about African religions, if it's a Muslim, he'll say, "Oh, this is
Don't worry,
this is idolatry."
I heard your question, brother. I heard your question. Don't worry, you don't need to repeat it. You've asked a very, very important question. Yeah. And the answer to it itself can be a whole show by itself. But to get to, you see, we have to bear two things in mind. Okay, and you know, if as you're a brother who Sikh yourself, you would appreciate some of this, because as being a Sikh, you would know that Sikhism, a bit like Islam, had to come from a position of fighting another religion that was really trying to again eradicate it totally. Yeah, with the African, unfortunately, to a degree, because it's not been totally successful, not at all. The resilience of what we might term African spirituality is even stronger than we will assume. You know, the first thing is we need education. Yeah. And when I talk about education, we're talking about institutionalized education. Okay? Yeah, because this is where most of the indoctrination takes place. Yeah? As people go through the schooling system, they're given these ideas. Okay. If you look, because one of my background, 15 odd years teaching in the British education system. When you come to this topic of religious education, okay, when you read about everybody else's, everybody has paragraphs. When it comes to them talking about African traditional religion, because this is the term they prefer to use, and for good measure, I said this at the beginning of the show. Once it's called traditional, that particular word in there, traditional, that means it's in the past. You don't need it today. Christianity, and I'm just going to deviate slightly. Nobody calls Christianity traditional Christianity, even though most of the canon and everything else stretches beyond medieval times. They just call it Christianity. So why do we have this traditional thing in the description of African spirituality? And as I said, as I know education, indoctrination, the power of suggestion, it's there to enforce this idea that it's something that's past. You don't need to go back to it. There's nothing of value there. It's long gone. Forget it. You understand? So that level of institutionalized education has to come. So that means we have to be given spaces within educational curricula to rewrite these falsehoods that are centuries old. Did you understand? And look, let me show you even an example of how deep this thing goes. Because Professor Bempa, when he had to publish his book, Akan Traditional Religions, he got in touch with, I believe it's either Cambridge or Oxford Press. Okay, Britain is a country that talks about religious tolerance, democracy. Everybody deserves a right to be heard, right? Do you know what the publishing house told him? This country is a Christian country, and we cannot publish material that does not cover that.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah. Professor Bempa will tell you. So, and even further now, let me even take it even further now. The Ofcom, the kind of broadcasting regulatory body in the UK a few years ago. It's funny enough because we were actually doing this research to bring it out. On their guidelines, they had a clear statement that said you cannot, in the media, represent African spiritual
witchcraft.
It says witchcraft, but witchcraft is like a synonym for what African spirituality is. Most people, that's what you ask them, they'll tell you, oh, it's obia, oh, it's juju. These things all mean witchcraft. It says you cannot represent witchcraft on the screen as if it has value. So, these are two things I'm telling you now. These things are happening at an institutional level. Okay, so this genocide, and I love that you put that word in there, brother. This ancestral genocide, this
cultural religious genocide.
Sorry,
I think of it as like a cultural genocide.
Yeah,
where you take the rich African roots of spirituality. You know, like, so I have family members who are Hindu, and when I go to a temple, I see that this is also, you know, my ancestors. And if you look at Buddhism, when the Buddhists, they go to the Chinese Buddhists, they honor their older Taoist, Shinto.
Yes.
But I see that if I have met an African Muslim and I asked him, like, before you guys were Muslim, what religion were you? They're like, oh, we were in ignorance, or we believed in idols, and he was cursing at his African, and I was shocked. I was shocked.
Yeah, well, if you understand the history, you should, and you are very right in this is partly a large part of the reason why you find that. And when I say Africans, I'm not just talking about those on the continent. I talk about it globally, because there is a big effort to push us away from. You see, because when you revere your ancestors, what you're saying is, I'm proud of the legacy from which I originate. Yeah. And it gives you that psychological motivation for you to know that, yes, I'm also worthy. Yes, I can also achieve. But if you're believing this story that your ancestors were nothing and they knew nothing, even though we can find that all the subjects of discipline have an African origin, you know, even logically, because that's where the first Homo erectus or human being came from, then how are you going to aspire to any greatness? Because you already believe you're nothing. Psychologically, you've already stopped yourself from attaining anything great because you don't think you're capable.
So, brother, I had another question. My knowledge on Islam.
Rain. I'm going to make this your last question for now, so I can move on to MA. Sure. Go ahead, ask it.
So, brother, so my knowledge on Christianity, Islam is very less. I have more knowledge on Buddhism and Hinduism. So I want to, when you talk about ancestor worship or ancestor, is that looked down upon in Islam and Christianity? Because when I went to Singapore, I saw many, like if you go to Singapore, in front of each and every shop, like a store, in the evening, everyone has a little table in front of all the stores, and they have an offering for the ancestral spirits, like a little apple, a little soda, a little incense, and it's in all the stores. You can look on YouTube, and it's very common. It's not something that's looked down upon or condemned or criticized. But do you feel that this is criticized, like African ancestor veneration?
It's the first thing any African will tell you, and again, as I said, you see, the first suggestion is that you worship your ancestors. That again is a falsehood. You're not worshiping your ancestors. You rather understand that your ancestors have set an example for you to emulate. And you see, part of the inspiration that brought forth the work that myself and my wife do, Ancestral Voices, happened partly because of one time when I had visited Japan. And this was in the afternoon. And I remember this day so clearly because this was their business district. Yeah. And among all these high rises, there was this temple with all this green space. Yeah. In the middle of, the concrete jungle. And I saw this man, clearly he'd come from maybe his lunch break, suit and tie, walks up into this temple, picks up a bit of water, pours it just like a libation. Then he takes this gong and then he hits this bell as a way of, again, calling first his ancestors, and then makes a prayer and lights an incense for them. I just sat there and I thought, okay, the manner in which this man's dressed is clearly he has a certain Western orientation. But at the same time, he knows during his lunch break, it's key for him to come here and pay his respects. Africans are ashamed of that. Even though on the one hand, most Africans who are Christian and Islam will be quick to tell you about, oh yeah, we built the pyramids and we were this, we were that. They still have they don't give that ancestral lineage any respect. So in that sense, you're already dislocating yourself from any form of energetic interchange that can come from what we might largely call the spiritual realm. While other people are acknowledging their ancestors and receiving that energetic reciprocation, we're busy chasing some image that has nothing to do with us or will bring us any level of assertion or power in this physical reality. This is what we're dealing with. Our energy is going nowhere because we're worshiping and focusing the wrong things. That's what the problem is.
Beautiful, beautiful. Brother MA, are you with us?
Yes, ShakaRa, Wagwan.
Yes, sir. Greetings, greetings. Now, I know when MA comes on the chat, yeah, you know it's gonna be a serious thing, yeah. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna go into some depth, some levels. You know what I'm saying? Something that man probably never even considered is gonna come up right about now. I don't know if you're with your queen, but I do want to say that she's most welcome to join the conversation also if she so wishes, my brother. And yeah, especially because I would love some Congo energy up in the thing right about now. You know what I mean? But we love that. What's your contribution, my brother?
Well, first of all, she is with me. So
all right.
Hello.
Greetings, my sister. Greetings. Your name is Kosu, right?
Yes, Kosu.
And you're from the Congo?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we have Tanzania. By way of Ivory Coast, we've got Ghana, and we've got the Congo up in the house, kings and queens. And you know what? I'm going to be visiting the Congo soon because there's some serious things going on over there with regards to African spirituality. Do you know what I'm saying? I know of some things that are happening over there. So, yeah. Say that again?
I said, that's right.
Yes. You know what I mean? But yeah, so feel free to make a contribution, sis, if you have one. But yeah, MA, you wanted to say something or ask a question or whatever.
Yeah, before I do, I believe Kosu knows Dalian, actually.
Yeah, hi Dalian.
Yeah, I was just about to say, this is not Kosu from the Avenues Youth Center, is it? It is, yeah? Okay, hello Kosu. Yes, ShakaRa, in my days as a youth worker, Kosu is one of the young ladies I worked with.
Okay.
Very... Yeah.
Wait, was she a youth when you worked with her?
Yeah, of course. She was one of the youths I worked with.
So this is your uncle, Kosu.
Yeah,
pretty much
right there.
All right. Good. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, man. You know what? I had a question, and then Dalian broke that Ofcom line to me, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I just tried to search it up, man. I couldn't find it. So Dalian, I'd really appreciate if you can give us like a link or a PDF or something, because I need to read that.
Go on.
Crazy. So the the Ofcom.
Yeah, the Ofcom regulation. Yeah. Because brother Emmy, just quickly to jump in there, they've taken the regulation off now. Imagine that. It's gone off.
When did they?
They've now taken it off.
When did they remove that?
Well, the reason why I came to find out they removed that was last year. We were planning on setting up a petition to show that this discrimination occurs at an institutional level. Do you understand? Because how can you allow for us to show, I don't know, somebody claiming to pray to Jesus and getting this result, but you are telling us someone who is praying to another kind of energy is hearsay and makes no sense. So when we went up there, because we needed that to verify what we were campaigning for, that particular line doesn't exist no longer on their website. But you know what? It might be just then we've missed it. So I'll tell you what, just go to Ofcom regulations and please have a read, because if you find it, I would love to see it. It can become the source of a very good campaign to hold the government to account, to say, you know what, you're talking democracy on your right hand and really you're discriminating on the left at an institutional level.
Yo, if they've got rid of that, they're lucky, man. I'm telling you, because I would have at them. Trust me, we would have. Yeah, that would have been messy. That would have been messy.
Are you on my Facebook as well, M.A. Brown?
Yeah. Recently, I think.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'll send you some other links as well.
Yes,
yeah.
Please, bro. Yes,
I'll send you some other links. Yeah.
The other thing I was going to ask ShakaRa, I had a question. So one of my questions was, how can the acceptance and incorporation of African spiritual practices help to sculpt our political relationships with the world?
All right. So I was speaking to my good big brother, Unc Aku, Kemetic yoga master and also African-centered marketing master as well earlier today. And he actually asked me, Brother Dalian, to ask you, how can African spirituality contribute to building African power? Yeah. And I kind of feel like that question is in line with what Brother M.A. is asking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw it to Dalian first. I'll kind of compliment what the brother brings.
So yes, what was the question, Brother ShakaRa or Brother M.A.? Exactly.
Repeat your question, Brother M.A. Repeat your question.
Yeah. No, it was how can the acceptance and incorporation of African spiritual practices help to sculpt our political relationships with the rest of the world?
How can it? It's essential. It's in all.
Sorry, maybe how does it? Maybe how does
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. In various ways. Firstly, in terms of the mindset that it will prime. Yeah. I think it's very important, because the mindset determines the actions that follow. Okay. And there are many things it can prime your mind to do, but I'll just pick out a few out of that, just so my answer doesn't come across as so long-winded. Is that the first is that it will show us the importance of having a deep level of unity, regardless of, should we say, slight individual changes, yeah, or should we say slightly different, or slightly different, should we say different objectives, because we can see the whole picture and see where each of maybe our slightly different takes on the same matter can assist us. And you know, don't just let's not just take my word for it. Again, let's go back to Haiti. We saw how it brought about the establishment of the first Black Republic in the Americas.
Yes, yes.
And most importantly, when we go into the south of the Americas, where we find these communities that they called quilombos, particularly in Brazil, these were liberated areas within these countries where Africans were operating freely, because they were practicing an African-derived spiritual system. Yeah, and one of the most famous was one called Palmares, and the figure was a Zumbi. Yeah. Now, this community was able to be self-sustainable for 100 years. Yeah. So you just think of that. That's a whole community where, from the governor or the president, if you will, or the leader, down to all the community, if you want to call it the lay citizens, were functioning.
Yeah.
So again, as I said, it first primes you on a certain mental level. And because you have that mental, should we say, level of thinking, you also start to energetically exchange information, as I mentioned about earlier. You see, these things, I can't tell it to you for you to understand. Unless you're in the practice, you can't see it, because this is not a theoretical exercise. This is a lived experience. So I can only show you the examples of where they were practiced and the successful results that they had.
Yes.
Because you just not only think of it, your actions prime you to then carry out certain specific actions. That's how that's the first way it will allow us to have that high level of political autonomy and activity, if you will.
Yes.
That's what it can do for us.
Definitely. I'm going to complement that now by saying by saying two things. Yeah. The first is that when we when we look at the first thing that it would do is ground us in the ultimate positive sense of self. Yeah. And by that, what I mean is that our own culture and spirituality represents the highest expression of divinity and human excellence. Yeah. My last video, in fact, brothers and sisters, you can check in my videos. Yeah, the last video that I premiered earlier today, about 12 p.m. today, is a man by the name of Kwesi Pra, and he's a linguist. Yeah, he's from Ghana, but he lives in South Africa at the moment, and he's doing a lot of work in terms of African languages. And he says that no people, yeah, have ever liberated themselves or developed themselves using somebody else's language. Yeah. And so one of the major implications that we've seen through colonialism, and the thing about colonialism is that what some of the first institutions that they built, the colonizers built, were churches and schools. And the schools and the churches worked simultaneously to teach the Christian religion and teach the English language or the Portuguese language or the French language and so on and so forth. Yeah. And so really that process gave the highest level of expression to the colonizer's language, because the highest level of expression is considered that which is divine, that which is of God. Yeah. And so if the African can see the highest level of expression in our own language, there is something that comes with that in terms of being grounded, yeah, in one's own tradition, and how we use that to see the world and solve problems, yeah, from that perspective. I think that's most definitely very, very important. And the second thing is gone from my head at the moment. It's from my head, but I think that's a very big thing. You know what I'm saying? Just the idea that when I pray, yeah, to the Creator, when I venerate the ancestors, yeah, when I call on whatever is around me, I remember the second thing now, yeah, that the Creator that I'm speaking to understands, yeah, my language as sufficient, not only sufficient, but the highest expression. You know what I'm saying? Of what it means to be divine and to be spiritual. The other thing that I'd say, where it would have a serious implication politically, is in terms of how we relate to the environment. Yeah, I believe that a lot of the reason why we have an issue in terms of the destruction of the earth at the moment is because we have been brought up into psychologies and sociologies and social systems, religious and irreligious, that separate us or make us distinct from the planet, the earth, nature in which we live. You know, it kind of reinforces a lack of reverence for nature, or a combat or a war with nature. And because of everything that Dalian has explained in terms of the relationship that African spiritual systems generate with the environment in which we live, there's a certain reverence for the environment, a connection with it that will lead us, sociologically speaking, to preserve it, yeah, to protect it, yeah, to ensure that it produces abundance for us rather than scarcity. And I feel that those things, you know what I mean, are particularly important, and will have a direct impact upon Africa's relationship with the world, in the sense that if we understand that, we would seek to have a different relationship with our environment and take command of the resources of our environment, and not allow others to exploit it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I hope that kind of feeds into what you're saying, Brother M.A.
Yeah, and also, ShakaRa, I think just to add to that as well, in terms of how women are treated and even represented at those higher levels of political engagement, if you will, yeah. So, and this is why I made it general, that the way it will prime our minds is all, and we can talk about so many different areas. But you're right, we're not people now talking about climate change, X, Y, Z, T, Y, Q, whatever. Again, it's inbuilt in there, as you said, with the nature. But also, Brother M.A., just to let you and Brother ShakaRa know, I have gone to find the Ofcom document. Interestingly enough, it was stuck in an email from a long time ago, because, you know, I saw this thing and I was like, just look at this level of hypocrisy, right? So I found it, and we're going to put it in the YouTube chat forum. But yeah, ShakaRa, if you think you have the time, I will gladly read to you the treatment from these regulations of what you can find under African spirituality versus what you can find under religion. But that's up to you. But yeah, I'll put it there.
And you know, Brother Dalian, you put in my mind as well, yeah, that I'm gonna do a session at some point, yeah, in the next few months on women in African spirituality. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The role, the function, depictions, and the divinity of women in African spirituality. I think it's a fundamental aspect of the thing. Very, very fundamental. I'm picking up brothers and sisters in the chat, asking kings and queens, yeah, loving the fact that the audience is with us. You know what I'm saying? We love you. Give thanks, and we're asking you to like the video. Over 60 people watching right about now. There's 50 something likes, so do hit the like button. And you know what? The one thing I haven't said all show, but the subscribe button is also there, kings and queens. So if you like shows like this, and I've got new Black Daddy Diaries, you know what I'm saying, just charting my journey as a new father, and I'm releasing stuff on the development of Pan-Africanism and African spirituality all the time, kings and queens. So do hit the subscribe button if you like the content. And we will be, you know, I want to give thanks to those who have even liked it before I even said, and even commented, and even subscribed before I've even asked you. I love that energy right there. Brother M.A., feel free to stay on the panel. I don't know if Sister Kasu has something to say, but this is not by force. Yeah, this is not by force. But if she does, then just feel free to say it now. And after that, I'm going to go to Brother Witness.
No. She's she's chilling. She's chilling. I've got another question, but I can wait.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, cool. All right. Now I have a feeling, Yeah, we're gonna go somewhere else right about now. Yeah, so I'm gonna introduce Brother Witness to the show. Brother Witness, are you with us?
Hello, ShakaRa. I'm here.
Greetings, Brother Witness. Greetings. All right, my brother. Yes. So I have an idea of where you want to go with this thing, because you did ask me to ask the question, but as soon as I saw you were here, I figured I'd get you to ask it yourself. So fire away, my brother.
Sure. Thanks very much, ShakaRa, for letting me come on, and I'm very grateful and thankful that Dalian Adofo was able to come in today to share some knowledge with us, and it's good that he's shared some beautiful knowledge about the African spiritual systems. It's glad to hear that knowledge and people learning from it. I just wanted to ask a question to you or to him. I noticed the following gods have similarities: Sango, the Yoruba god; Amadioha, the Igbo god; Zeus and Thor. They tend to carry and control lightning and thunder. So I'll be curious, did the creation of masculine gods controlling thunder and lightning come from Africa and migrate to Europe? Or is it just coincidental that a god controlling thunder and lightning was created in different parts of the world?
Interesting question. Go ahead, Brother Dalian.
You know, that actually is one of the simplest questions to answer. Because at its most basic level, all the knowledge that all the disciplines of knowledge that we know have their roots in Africa. So as an extension, everything else follows by default. Yeah. But then the most important thing, as I've said, is very key that we do not again start to see, and I mentioned this, I don't know when the brother joined the call, that you know, just cause a Zeus or what's the other guy name in the Greek pantheon controlling thunder and lightning. Again, yes, the personification of these ideas is for us to understand them, but it's not for us to get stuck on them as literal representation of something. Okay? It's a symbolic narrative for you to make sense of that story. So, you know, Sango, in a sense, is not a controller of lightning. Lightning is a natural process. Because again, as I said, I've already mentioned, some people put Sango as an Asian king in Yoruba area called Jakuta. Okay? So he didn't start off as, if you want to call it, necessarily a manifestation of the supreme god. They can trace him into as being an ancestor. In the same way, in the Egyptian pantheon, what we call Osa or Osiris, you know, we represent him as this male figure, but then we also know that perhaps he used to be an ancient king. This is how one of the Greeks described him, that he was one of the ancient kings who taught the Cometians how to cultivate wheat and grain. So on his transition, he was raised to being a god because he gave humanity knowledge they didn't have before. Yeah, it's not like in the Greek pantheon where it's just some a man who's controlling thunder and lightning somehow. Because let's not forget, in our minds, ShakaRa, and this is one of these scientific theories, what we call our thoughts or our minds, we have these memories because they're electrical impulses that run through our nervous system.
Yes.
So the electricity you see outside also happens to be one of the aspects of your thinking process.
Yes.
So this is where I was telling you earlier. Go on.
Sorry, I just want to throw in this. The same can be said for Ogun and the iron in our blood. Of
course. This is what I'm saying. If you say Sango is just Thor, you're basically looking at the surface of that understanding. You don't have a real understanding, because you need to make Sango relevant to your life, because that Orisha or that energy is a part of your makeup. So how do you express yourself as Sango?
Yes.
It's not just a nice bedtime story. No, we keep doing that. We're dealing at a religious level. We need to go deeper. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I just wanted to ask one last question before.
Go ahead.
I was just curious. can African spiritual systems fall into the trap of creating caste systems within its spiritual philosophy? For example, like Hinduism. The reason I ask this is because in Nigeria, the Igbo have a system called a spiritual caste system called Osu, and the Osus are treated as inferior persons to the class of the Indiala people. Even a famous Igbo writer called Chinua Achebe wrote a book called No Longer at Ease. And in there, he talks about how the Osus are given separate seats in churches. They're seen as unclean and not allowed to break kola or make prayers. But even in Europe, I know within the heart of Roman Catholicism in the old days, you had the caste system. Of course, at the top is the Pope. And then you had your cardinals and your priests, and everyone was like towards the bottom unless you were a member of the aristocracy. Can African spiritual systems end up falling into that trap of having this caste system?
Good question. Good question.
Very, very good question. So ShakaRa, do you want to answer, or I can offer only what I think?
No, go ahead. I will compliment yourself.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, brother. Very important one, because it's something that I also touched upon in a show that I had about a month ago, where I was talking about, then you have also those who are now saying that, my Nigerian Ifa is better than your candomblé in Brazil, just because it's from the continent. Yeah. This is where human nature feels itself. Of course, it is open to people trying to use it for power, especially when we go into the organization of it. And really, this is not something that I can say, oh, it will never happen or it will happen, because we already see aspects of it happening. But this is where you realize how people interject their social preferences, into spaces where it should otherwise not be. So as you just mentioned about the Osu, or even those graduations in the Yoruba system, you find this in it's almost like a certain form of tribalism. So really, the onus, we know what the traditions demand of us to attain our highest possible self, such that we can work without these particular human preferences, that we should be able to give and be as open as possible, but at this very same time, also very protective of what we're giving out. It might sound like a contradiction, but it's not. It just means in all and every available time, you should be able to operate in all spheres of existence. You should be equally ready to protect yourself as much as you're giving something out. And again, that takes practice. This doesn't come by default.
Thank you very much, ShakaRa, and thank you very much, Dalian, for answering.
Yes, sir. Give thanks. I'm going to add to that quickly and just say, because I'm not an expert on the Osu, but from what I do understand, the Osu come about because of it was a system of punishment initially. This is how I understand it. For people that basically were seen or believed to have done certain particular kinds of wrongs, and so one of the ways, and this is not just among the Igbo, but one of the punishments in certain African societies was to ostracize individuals who had committed certain kinds of crime. The idea is that disassociation from the community was the ultimate punishment. To be disowned by the communal body was to be the ultimate kind of punishment. I don't have enough information to know how the system kind of evolved into what might be classed as a caste system. I couldn't speak to that because I haven't studied it enough. Except to say that there is enough within our traditional systems to correct those kinds of features in our history, especially because we know we've had such a turbulent history, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know when this thing came in fully and how it evolved with the process throughout the processes of slavery and colonialism and them kind of things there. You know what I'm saying? But Brother Witness mentioned the church, so and them kind of things there. So I don't know how those systems affected the development of whatever was going on, but except to say that there is enough within our spiritual systems to correct any level, those kinds of levels of injustice as and where they do occur. especially if the system was originally a system of correction that was bastardized in any particular way, either via the people's own deviation from the practice, or via the accommodation of alien practices, or responses to invasion or colonization and them kind of things there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, the main reason I mentioned Europe is because I noticed that their church systems also have like this whole caste system that it's not as powerful as it was, say, 200 years ago, but it's there. So it's not unique to a certain African spiritual system. It seems international.
Not at all. At the same time, we do understand that we are an African people, and so wherever we see certain things that within our own systems, we have a responsibility and a duty, according to the teachings of our ancestors, to correct them. You know what I'm saying? These are the teachings that our ancestors laid down, and
Absolutely.
we kind of use those examples, their example, as the foundation or the framework, from which to find that correction. You know what I mean? So we don't the idea of we approach. We deal with the reality as well as the ideal. You know what I'm saying? We deal with the reality, ideal. You know what I mean? So that's beautiful right there. All right, a couple other panel members now, brother Dalian. I was gonna wrap up soon. I wanted to wrap up soon. There was a couple panel members that had a couple more questions. Are you able to stay for 15 minutes more?
Yeah, 15 minutes more will be the most I can do, because I was actually meant to leave at 10:30. But yeah, no, I'll stay 15 more minutes. No problem.
I give thanks. MA and Rain, sorry, Killing Donny wanted to answer a question, and MA and Rain had another question. So we're gonna do that right about now.
Yeah,
brother Killing Donny, I'm gonna ask you to be brief, my brother. You wanted to answer the question about restoring dignity to African spirituality.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes. Sorry. Can you repeat the question again?
No, yeah, you wanted to respond to the question about restoring.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. What happened is there is a link I shared on the chat. Yes. The link goes to the Pew Research Organization.
Okay.
They've done. If you go there, they do these large surveys. So the one that is there on their website right now, they did a research about spirituality in Africa, covering 25,000 people in so many countries, from Senegal, Kenya, Botswana, all over the place.
Yes.
And then, of course, naturally, if right now, and we go back to some of the points that the gentleman was speaking earlier,
yes,
African religion is just below the surface, or African spirituality is just below the surface. Unfortunately, through colonialization, it has been given such a bad name. People are ashamed to say outright that I follow this.
Right.
So what the Pew Research Organization did, they asked some questions. For example, one of the questions that is on the site, if you go on the website, you'll see it, is, do you give offerings to the ancestors? And the people that say that if you're a Christian, you're not supposed to do this, and definitely if you're a Muslim, this thing is called shirk. You're not supposed to do it. Amongst Muslims and amongst Christians, when they were asked this question, do you provide, do you give an offering to ancestors? The percentages are extremely high in all the countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
70%, 80%, 90%. You know?
Good.
They had another question. So it is there. So the issue is just a matter of, one of the things we can do is through education, to re-educate our people, so that when you believe in this, when you have got this African spirituality, it is nothing to be ashamed about. Once the stigma is removed, this thing will come back to the surface.
All right.
But there's a lot of desensitizing and re-educating the people. Once you remove it, it will come back to the surface.
You know, I agree. You know, you see a lot of graphs and statistics that say that Africa is 52% Christian and 48% Muslim, and that which equals 100%, which means that generally speaking, the traditionalists are not even acknowledged. Their existence is not even acknowledged. Yes. It's interesting, but we know that they do exist. At the same time, we understand that even in Christianity and Islam, there is a lot of syncretization and retention of African spirituality in many of the practices of Islam and Christianity. So especially among the Sufis in West Africa and the more spiritualist churches across the continent and throughout the diaspora as well. So I totally agree with Killing Donny that just scratch the surface, restore some dignity, and it will begin to emerge and flourish. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Definitely. Brother Kilindoni, what is the link, please, in the chat that you said you put in there?
The clue.
Can you please
Let me.
repost
I
it?
can
Because
send it to
there's
you
a lot
again.
of comments. There's a lot of
I can
comments that
send
are
it again.
Yes, please.
I think I actually read it the other day. You know, I was going through some stuff and I came across something like that the other day that was giving some statistics similar to what you. So yeah. So yeah,
I'm sending it to you now.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
I'll send it to you in a minute, then you can see it. But it is there.
All
It
right.
is a very interesting thing, and it's interactive, so you can go and query it, and you can see what's happening. It is very, very interesting. There are lots of questions that you can go and ask. I've sent it to you now. I've sent it now.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Brother Kindoni, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay on the line, but please mute your mic again.
I'll do that.
And Rain, you had another question.
Yes. So the question I have is, are the African spiritual religions, are they exclusivist in nature? So just to give you an example, like the Dharma religions of Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, we are not exclusivist in the sense that we don't believe that if you're not a Sikh or not a Hindu, not a Buddhist, that means you go to hell forever. What we believe is that, let's say, we see the divine in the African religion. So we see that if you're a person who's following the African religion, then follow it to the best possible way, because we see the presence of God there. And that if you follow, you can go to heaven or you know, the afterlife. So but I think in Islam and Christianity, they say that if you're not part of if you're not Islam, then the God, you know, puts you in the fire forever. There's no chance of, you know, coming out. So what is the take on the African religions? Are they also similar to the Dharma religions, where they say that you know, like each path is unique and there's no like hell forever, ever, like in the Abrahamic?
Good question.
Yeah. Okay, ShakaRa, is that you or me?
That's you, bro. That's you.
All right. Okay. So first of all, is it Ray?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes, Ray. So Ray, you know, when you start off with the very basic concept that, you know, I mentioned this earlier, there is no notion of what we call a devil, yeah, in African traditions. Okay. So what they did is just pick up particular energies or manifestation of energies and try and force this idea into the African spiritual systems. Okay, there is no devil, and then there is no place called hell where you go and there's all this fire and you're burning forever and you're still not getting burnt, whatever. In any case, the only even individual that comes close to even this concept, and it's not the same, is in what we might find in the Dogon traditions, where they have this being called Ogo. And Ogo really is just this is the interesting thing, right? Ogo isn't a being like the devil who has his own hell that he tries to entice people into. Yeah. What Ogo's fault is that Ogo wants to be as powerful as the source from which it emanates. So it tries to do everything. Sorry?
I was just saying in Dogon that source is Ama. The deity.
Yes, yes, the supreme being Ama. Yes. So all Ogo's, if you want to call it, fault is Ogo tries to become Ama. Okay, and he because that's where a bit of the anthropologist puts the agenda. The way he does it is it's not life-giving, but rather he forces it onto his sister. It becomes ancestral rape. For him to try and create what Ama has made. Yes. Do you understand? So all we have is this, if you want to call it an opposite, but we don't have this idea of a devil and you're going to hell. No, that's impossible, right? And as I mentioned, if you want to call it the good or the heaven, is when you elevate your consciousness to be able to become and live like the highest expression that we call God, which is this being that can only benefit other beings. All that they do is in the service of not only themselves, but also their family and the community at large. Okay, that's when you are God, quote unquote. And when you're doing things that then disagrees and brings disharmony, discontent to people that you interact with or are in a community with, then you're basically manifesting, if you want to call your devilish self, if you want. And as ShakaRa has mentioned from the earlier question, this is where, you know, there's no jails or prison cells for you to go. Rather, you take your bad energy with you and leave the community, because you that one rotten apple, for lack of a better analogy, you can spoil the rest. Yeah. So yeah, no, there's no if you want to call it even good and bad per se. Things become very relative, and it's all about, as we mentioned, your good character. And when you're acting under what we might call good character, you will be you always are a source of beneficence and positivity to others. That's what good character manifests as.
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah, no devils.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very similar concept to the Dharma traditions. It's a very mature concept.
Yeah, but you know, people only seem to think it's devil worship. Yeah.
Give thanks for that, Ray. I'm gonna ask you to mute your mic once more. Right, brother MA, you had another question?
Yes, people. So I've got a couple of statements, and then I'm going to ask a question. But that question.
You know what, bro? Can I ask you to ask the question first? Because what I'm going to do is allow Brother Dalian to depart. Yeah, respectfully, so we don't take out any more of his time. But I will continue. I will continue the conversation until 11 o'clock for anybody else who has anything else to say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the question was. It's actually, you know, I can wrap it all in this question, to be honest. So what you were saying, ShakaRa, which was an answer to the question I had, which was that we should naturally be looking to develop and revise African spiritual traditions in 2019. I'm guessing that's kind of what you were kind of insinuating a bit earlier on.
Definitely.
Sorry?
Definitely.
Yeah, and as a result of that, I'm kind of the opinion that, you know, the amalgamation of these spiritual systems should really logically fit in with a Pan-African ideology quite nicely.
Definitely.
It does.
Which is a very interesting precedent, especially for the diaspora.
Yeah.
It's something that a lot of brothers are already doing. So yeah, I'm really kind of keyed into that now. On the back of that, I just wanted to ask, ShakaRa will be familiar with this question because I kind of raised it in one of the other live streams that we had. Brother Dalian, because you made you're a media producer and made Ancestral Voices. I was talking in one of the live streams previously about the idea of trying to establish what role media and what I've called fifth person kind of consumption. I couldn't find any other way to describe it. African spiritual systems have probably another way to interpret a TV screen showing something that is not directly in front of us, that is being projected to some other material. I just want to know if you have an opinion yet, or you're exploring how different ways that we can maybe have relationships with media and screens and consumption, and how that spiritually should be approached in the future.
Well,
when MA comes on the call, it goes places. You know?
yeah, very interesting. The first thing I'll tell you, MA, is, you know, that as you've expressed that intention, you know, I will definitely be keeping you in mind, because as I said, you know, beyond what myself and Verona have been able to do, this is not that is needed. This has to go at that level of institutionalization, because you see, when we're able to get to that point where you can go down to the crossroads at the bottom of your road and put your offering out, no problem, without thinking that somebody's going to come and attack you or do something weird to you. That's when we're actually going to start seeing the manifestation of this, what people might call a metaphysical realm, or I don't know whether you want to call it the spiritual realm. This is when our consciousness is going to go very far. But at the moment, as we're hiding under covers and no, because we're still not paying it its due homage. Okay. So when we start to make those journeys towards that, I'm definitely going to remember your name, because I'll be calling out to you, you know, because myself and Verona, not that, because you can never do enough, but we've done more than even beyond our means. You understand? And this thing is not just about us. It's about really what kind of world do we want?
Yes.
Did you understand? Because if you look at what's his name again, Wale, and his book that he wrote, how Ifa can mend the broken world.
Yes.
That's, and ShakaRa showed you already one of the examples of how we would be more circumspect in the way we abuse the natural resources that we have access to.
Yes, sir.
The way we abuse people who we think are less powerful than us. We can create a totally different world from this kind of consciousness that we have. Look at how this year started, and all we're talking about is children and this and that being abused and all kind of stuff. This is the kind of energy this year opened up with. So there's a lot of energetic interference, psychic attacks on even how we're thinking and behaving to keep us in a certain kind of barbaric state, if you want to call it. When I say barbaric, I mean we're just not functioning to our full potential. And this, in this kind of level of this disharmony, is only the people who cause the disharmony who benefit. Hence, it's in some people's interest to keep it in such a state of disharmony. It's that simple. So I will be calling on you, but getting back to the filming and the representation of our stuff. I remember when we started Ancestral Voices in 2010, there was hardly any material about African spirituality. In those 8 years, I can list for you at least 10 different films, even down to the Hollywood presenter, actor, what's his name, Dijon Honsu, making a film about voodoo. And when we started, there was none of that. Because everybody was afraid. Did you understand? So sometimes, you have to walk out on a limb. But again, this could all be just a part of a natural wave of occurring. That things are occurring according to a certain, divine instruction. Because, as we say, or we understand in the African spiritual philosophy, because everything is a cycle. That means today you may have been at the top of the circle. Tomorrow you found yourself, for lack of a better word, at the bottom, because the circle doesn't have these things of up and down. It's not that linear. It's just round, and there are no positions of power. So maybe this is just part of that natural progression. But we're happy to see, because look, there's films like Ori Inu, Rise of the Orishas, Summer of the Gods. They've just been popping up in just the tiny, because 8 years really is nothing. For us, it felt like a very long time, but just that one, sacrifice. Then all of a sudden, everybody has now the courage to do it. So likewise, and this is why, and ShakaRa would have heard me say this before, when people ask, we don't need to worry about going to try and do, the same way the Abrahamics do with their proselytizing, and they try and come and convert you, blah, blah, blah. No. Let's just show the possibility in the way that we live. And in the way that we will come to attain the things that, as I said, I know we can attain. Much of the reason why we haven't been able to do all these things is there's a disconnect between philosophy and practice. So most people will wax lyrical about, we created the world religion and we did this and we did that. But they've never even poured a little cup of libation in their life. So the thing up in your head, and that's just one aspect of manifestation. You understand? It's maybe like 5%. Now you need to boost up that intent in your head with ritual.
Yes.
So if you're doing one and not the other, you're still losing out. If you really want to manifest, you do all things together. So in terms of media representation, no. The most important thing we can do is let's just put the content out there. Because there's centuries of ignorance. It's not going to be easy to break at all. No one should be under any illusions. It's going to take a lot of work. But the most important thing is we keep doing the work, because people will become better informed.
Beautiful, Brother Dalian. I'm going to piggyback this one little question for Sister Melanated Goddess, and she's asking if one needs to learn an African religion. An African language in order to go to an African spirituality.
The creator speaks no language. The creator only knows what you might call love and good character. If you're acting in such a manner, then you're speaking the creator's language.
Beautiful. That's a short answer. I would say though that if you're looking to get the best out of a particular system, it might be advisable to learn the language only because of the fact that the concepts within it are kind of particular to the culture, and so the language is the best communicator within the system, if that makes sense. So it's totally not yeah. So it's not that you can't learn the system without the language, but the best way, one of the best ways to learn the system is through the language itself, because of how the system expresses itself in the language. But yes,
of course, totally, man. Yeah, but let's not get reliant on the language, because as we also happen to know, most of the language systems have been changed also on purpose.
Definitely. I hear that point completely. Brother Dalian, I'm humbled and thankful.
My pleasure, Brother ShakaRa.
To Eledumare, to Nana Nom Unsamanfo, to the Egungun, to Mozuma ancestors, for you, and for Sister Verona and your children. I'm sure your children are big.
Give thanks, brother. Give thanks, and likewise, same to you, man. Same to you.
And I'm going to encourage brothers and sisters. I'm sharing the link once again to Ancestral Voices, the trailer, and the website. Do you still have a donation button on the website, Dalian?
Yes, we do, Brother ShakaRa. Also on the site, you can anyone can feel free to donate to the work that we do, because as much as we've done so much, there's also a lot more that needs to be done. So yeah, we appreciate any support that anyone can help us to realize these opportunities. We're gonna post that in the link now, actually, the donate link.
All right, cool. So
thanks, Brother ShakaRa.
No problems, bro. And also, you can also get Ancestral Voices, the film documentaries 1 and 2 at the website also, and the book, Ancestral Voices, Spirit is Eternal. So if you're just beginning on your African spirituality journey, or even if you're in another religion and you just want to learn some more, then you can feel free to utilize the resources that Ancestral Voices has developed. Thank you again, Sister Verona, Brother Dalian, and feel free to hang out when you're ready. You know what I mean?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you for having us, Brother ShakaRa. Blessings and guidance to you, your Queen Ahenda, and the young prince as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bless you. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right, kings and queens. We're going to continue until about 11 o'clock, You know what I'm saying? Anybody else got anything to say? Another 10 minutes, you know what I mean? That we can get in and deal with some matters, anything that's left over. I do want to say shout out to everyone that's been, licking up the chat hard, And thank you to Brother Isa. There's a lot of conversation going on in the chat that I haven't been able to observe. But he did tag me and let me know to nip him if the chat is going off point. I want to say debate is fine. Where we in fact encourage respectful debate. For all brothers and sisters, whatever spiritual perspective we're coming from. So we ask that brothers and sisters that are coming from an Abrahamic religious perspective or whatever religious perspective to be respectful of the perspective that is being put forward, even if you disagree. And there's no problem to disagree, share your disagreements, but do it respectfully. But we also ask brothers and sisters coming from an African spiritual perspective to also, in as much as the brothers and sisters coming with Abrahamic perspectives relate respectfully, we also ask you to relate respectfully to them also. Reciprocity is important, and in Ma'at we call that kemet. So it's like in kemet we call that Ma'at. Am I saying? You know what I mean? Balance, kings and queens, balance. We must respond to brothers and sisters with the energy that they bring to us. So we ask you all to do that and maintain respectful dialogue and respectful debate. You know what I'm saying? But also don't be so thin-skinned either, you know what I mean? A brother can challenge your thing, or a sister can challenge your thing without it, flipping over and going into next things. Right. Anybody that's left in the chat, I'm gonna send the chat the link again for anybody that wants to join it for the last 10 minutes. And I mean 10 minutes. But anybody that I don't know, brother MA, if you finished your points, because you said you had a couple points to make. So if you didn't finish them, then feel free to kind of extemporize on them slightly more.
Yeah, I kind of did, but I guess like just this idea of Brother Dalian did answer in a way, but I was more talking about the exploration of the actuality of media and of
there's something in that from my perspective, which is the fact that I don't know if you watched the video that with the conversation that I had at Speaker's Corner.
With
not last Sunday, the Sunday before, with Kalam and Brother Isa, Sunni Isa, And another brother, Muslim brother, whose name I don't know. So apologies to that brother. I don't know if you're tuned in or not. But yeah, but I was saying that because of the degradation of the system, of the systems, there's a natural evolution, that will take place within any system, that our growth, within our own systems has in effect been slightly retarded, because of the suppression, the lack of ability to openly express it without attack, the lack of the ability to apply it to how we organize society and government. And apply it to science and technology and disciplines like psychology and media. Just what I'm saying. And so in effect, what we're doing right about now, I feel like it's just bringing the pieces together, the pieces of the puzzle together, and creating the picture that would allow us to grow. It's like we're fertilizing the soil that will allow us to grow the best, of the products of our spirituality, of our spiritual systems, and what they can offer to the world. And that the world has been robbed of, for the last 1400 to 500 years, depending on your trajectory of history.
What Dalian was trying to say, I guess.
That's how I feel it is right about now. So we there are questions that we're asking right about now that we may not even know how to answer yet, until another 100 years time, when our children who have been immersed, and have the benefit of being able to practice in pride and dignity, are able to manifest greater in our own spirituality than what we are able to right about now. You know what I'm saying? That's how I feel about it. You know what I mean? But yeah, opening up the conversation to anybody else on the panel who wants to make a closing contribution.
Yes, I want to thank ShakaRa for allowing me to come on the panel. And I agree with everything that you say. And it's like this, it's a realization that I had when I was watching you on COE, when you were like kind of mob brushed by different people who were trying to challenge you on the African religions. And I was like, wow, they really see, like, the reaction was just amazing. And I kind of understood, like, maybe this is the reason why Africa has been so handicapped. Because its original population, it has been made to feel shame and to feel inferior, compared to the foreign ideologies. So they can't take the self, respect of their traditional religions and their traditional ancestors. And if you reject that, you're rejecting a part of yourself. And then it just leads to a path of I think it's sad. It's sad.
Well, I hear you, and thanks for your questions. They allowed us to have a certain to bring certain topics to the forefront, and I'm glad you got something from the conversations. You know what I mean?
Yes. Thank you very much.
No problem, sir. No problem, brother. Killing Donny, my brother, Killing Donny.
Yes, I'm here, sir.
My brother, before we close, I want to know the meaning of your name.
Okay. Kirindoni is the name of a place. That's not my actual name.
Okay.
It's a name that I use on the internet. But one thing I'll tell you, one thing that I do is talking about spirituality and going back to some of the things that people can do. One of the things we can do is reclaiming names. I feel very bad. I feel very bad when you meet a brother, whether it doesn't matter where you're from, whether it's from Africa or from the diaspora, and you're called, you're called Philip, or I don't know, whatever it is. These are not our names. So I will be slowly, we can educate ourselves. I mean, Philip, those who know Greek, is the lover of horses. Or I don't know, somebody's called Raphael in the Hebrew. Raphael means the Lord has spoken. Now, I'll tell you one story is in East Africa, where I come from, many people speak English. So what people tend to do is they tend to translate traditional names into English. So many of the African names, they're actually very, very nice names. So for example, there's a community of people in East Africa, and most of the names begin with Eli. Eli is a name for God. They will say like Eli Sante. It means thank you, God. So you call your son Eli Sante. Or you say Eli Bariki. Eli Bariki is similar to Barack Obama's name. Is Eli Bariki. It means God bless. Eli Bariki. So what you find is these people, as a way of trying to look sophisticated or as a way of trying to look educated, instead of saying Eli Bariki, which is a lovely name, which says God bless, or Eli Sante means thank you, Lord. they'll translate that into English, which in English is a silly name because you don't find an Englishman being called God bless. They don't exist.
Yeah, true. I hear you. I hear you.
You know, or another one, there's another one. You find people coming from Africa, they're called brothers from Zimbabwe, especially people who've been called Heaven Light. English people, native English speakers, don't have those names. Yeah, so you just look silly.
Another example is people. I know a lot of people from West Africa that are called names like Mercy, and Grace. And these kinds of
exactly. So so for example, there's a very common name where I come from. It's called Bahati. Bahati means luck or lucky. All right, it's a very common name. So if you're gonna call somebody lucky, call him lucky. You call him in your language, whatever it means. But once you translate it into English, you lose the meaning of the name completely, and you make the person look silly.
Yes. You know, my brother, there's an ancestral energy revolving around me and this name concept at the moment. I've had a day that has been full of the affirmation of reclaiming African names. And I can say that I come from that tradition. My father reclaimed African names before I was born. So I'm as an African from the Caribbean. I was the first generation, the first individual actually in my family since the enslavement of our lineage to be born with exclusive African names. That
is one.
Right, and so, but there's been some. I'm gonna say to everybody now to this YouTube Got Kush TV. That's GOT space KUSH space TV. And there's gonna be some big things coming from Got Kush TV on the reclamation of the African name concept. So just stay tuned for that. I will say no more. You know what I'm saying? I will say no more. But yeah, you're definitely correct, my brother. I want to thank you especially for bringing the Ivory Coast energy. And we need to change the name, my brother. You know what I mean? So I know you're from Tanzania, but I know in the Ivory Coast and let them know, yo, we need like I don't know if you're familiar with Thomas Sankara, but
yes, I am. Yeah, I am.
But when he took over in what they called Upper Volta, he renamed it
correct,
and called it Burkina, which means the land of
upright men.
Yes, you know what I mean. We need more of that, my brother. We need more of that.
It is true. It is true.
Facts, you know what I mean? Right. I'm gonna wrap up the show there, kings and queens, except to say thank you for joining us. Whether you are watching, whether you joined the call, those of you who contributed to the chat, those of you who like, those of you who subscribe. The reason why this is important because we need to begin to teach about African spirituality because there's a deficit of information out there, and so often those of us who are passionate about African spirituality tend to spend more of our energy debating Christians, Muslims and Jews than actually just affirming and teaching about African spirituality, what it is, and how it manifests itself, its history, its culture, its concepts, and while debate is good, while there's a place for debate, it doesn't always offer the best opportunity, for brothers and sisters to learn, as much as we can about our spirituality, our traditions, and what our ancestors were dealing with. So I give thanks for this opportunity. There will be more, I'm looking to do a session on African spirituality in the Caribbean, or in the Americas, should I say, in the diaspora. I also want to do a session specifically dedicated to unpacking voodoo. I got to today in terms of doing a session on African women in African spirituality and the feminine divine in African spirituality. And brother MA, this relates to what you were saying earlier. I'm actually in the process of putting together a series for the Center of Pan-African Thought on African philosophy, African philosophy. And so what I'm going to be looking at is how the philosophical concepts in African culture and spirituality inform social, economic and political organization, over a series of about 2 or 3 sessions. So that kind of relates to where you was going earlier. I will definitely let you know when the session is on hand, brothers and sisters. So I give thanks for all those who have contributed. Thank you for contributing, and please leave a comment after the video is done or tomorrow or whatever. So not in the chat now, but in the comment section. If you feel like you've got something from the conversation, from the video, I would love to hear, what particular point stood out to you, right? What particular point stood out to you, what you learned. And even if you want to challenge something that was said or you want more information about something, feel free to leave that in the comment section. So not the chat now, but the comment section after the video. The reason why I say that is because 1, it will give me a guide as to what people got from it, and 2, it will give me some guidance in terms of creating conversations in the future and the kinds of topics that need to be illuminated in the future, kings and queens. I want to shout out all the Abrahamics that came to make problems, you know what I'm saying, in the chat today. I give thanks for your energy same way. It's interesting to me that today was not a debate. Today was just about teaching African spirituality, and the response from some of you is not unexpected, but it's definitely part of the reason why we need to have these conversations. This was not designed as a debate. This was not designed or promoted as an attack against any spiritual or religious system, just a sharing about African spirituality. And the response from some of you has been very telling, and I hope brothers and sisters understand and see the example that was set today by those particular individuals. At the same time, I want to give thanks to those brothers and sisters who are not African spiritualists, who came to learn and to seek knowledge and to share and to engage with us respectfully. I recognize you and I appreciate you. I want to send finally a special shout out to all of those who are African spiritualists or seeking to learn about African spirituality and engage with it. Another time we'll do a session on ritual and how you can begin to institute African spirituality in your own personal lives. Very important. African Ancestral Voices have classes and courses on those subjects also, so feel free to check out the website for those courses there. We will be back again, kings and queens, and once again we give thanks as we close Tendai Mwadi. We're thankful unto the divine creative life force. Kudzai Muzima Mukulu. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Rombidzo Kuna Mwadi ya Africa. The divine creator of Africa be the glory. We'll see you again, kings and queens. This has been ShakaRa Speaks, featuring Ancestral Voices. Tendai Mwadi.